Chapter 1. Chapter Text. Izuku's life has been horrible for a long time. When he was 4, a doctor declared him quirkless, based exclusively on an extra toe joint, a research that has been outdated for more than a century. But who cares? He was declared quirkless, so he's useless. His best friend became his worst bully. Everyone turned his back to him. The teachers said they were there to hear and help him, but they lied because that's what they always do. They never cared for him, only for the kids with powerful quirks. Not even his mother, as much as she loved him, did not believe in his dream of being a hero. For an entire year, Izuku became the class training dummy for quirks. Many would think his life couldn't get worse. Well, think again. Because the next year, exactly on his birthday, another tragedy hit him, this time taking from him the only person that still loved him. After another bad day, upon entering his home, Izuku was greeted by the vision of his dead mother, sitting on a chair right in front of the door, face burned and eyes missing. It was such a horrible sight that Izuku couldn't even scream. He instantly went into shock. The only reason it didn't take days for the body to be found was that Mitsuki came to visit. Izuku stayed unresponsive for a few weeks. The culprit was never found by the police. Inko wasn't the first victim of this particular assassin. The media called him Eye Burner. A stupid name if you asked Izuku, but again, he couldn't even answer you at the moment. After that, Izuku has to move in with his father. Izuku was pulled out of school under the pretense of being homeschooled, as if the world, or some higher being, enjoyed torturing him, and maybe it really does. This was even worse. His father, if he could even be called that, would mercilessly beat him in every possible chance he had. Slaps, fists, kicks, bottles, even knives, and his fire breath quirk. Anything that could be used to hurt Izuku was used, some days more than once. The only care Hisashi has ever shown is not to kill him. That went for an entire year, until the day that his father, after leaving to work, he never said what his job was, left a paper behind. The paper was a list of names and dates, carefully organized in chronological order, and a single name in the list almost made his heart stop. Midoriya Inko, July 15th. It was his mom's death date. Immediately, praying to be wrong, Izuku went to his dad's PC and searched for the other names on the list. All of them were dead, murdered on the exact day on the list, and in the same way as his mother. A single line caught Izuku's attention. Presumed cause of death, burning. The eyes were probably removed while the victim was still alive. This raised too many red flags on Izuku's head. For as much as he's only a child, he's a clever child. And his father certainly isn't a good man. Looking to the side, Izuku saw a closed door, one that his father absolutely forbade Izuku from ever entering. But at this moment, Izuku already knows too much to be scared of this. He opened the door and found exactly what he feared finding there. Many jars, with name tags under them, and organized alphabetically. Almost like a trophy, a single jar was in the center of the room, with 2 familiar green eyeballs floating inside. And if that wasn't clear enough, the name tag said the rest. Midoriya Inko. Those were his mother's eyes. All this time, Izuku was living with his mother's murderer, and now he knew too much. There's no way Izuku will never call this monster his father again. Wouldn't figure out that Izuku knows, and then he will be the next victim. With this knowledge, Izuku left the house by the window. The door is always locked, and the keys are hidden, and ran as fast as he could. In his desperation to escape, he didn't pack anything. He didn't even put on his shoes. He just ran, trying to get as far away as he could. He thought of going to the police, but immediately gave up on the idea. He had no proof, and he already knew from past experiences that the police wouldn't even hear a kid, much less a quirkless kid. If he went to the police, he would only be sent back to Hisashi, to his own death. It's almost comical how much his life changed in only 2 years. From a happy kid to a homeless fugitive from a serial killer. And there's nothing he can do except learn to survive. His next year was torture. He did learn how to survive from trash only. Because as desperate as he was, Izuku refused to steal. But his life only got worse. More than once, he got sick. More than once, he got hurt. More than once, he broke bones. Maybe it's a good thing that Hisashi got his pain tolerance and heat resistance so high because if not, he certainly would have died from the multiple fevers he had along the following year. But somehow, he survived to his 7th birthday. A quirkless 7-year-old kid survived alone and homeless for an entire year. Guess he's not so useless, huh? But of course, the moment he starts to get optimistic is when life will choose to remember him how cruel she was. This time, it was in the form of 2 muggers that cornered him in an alley. Because obviously, the dirty shoeless kid must have something worth robbing, right? And what could Izuku, besides crouch down and cry, while the men kicked him, like Hisashi did so many times, begging for them to stop, but they didn't. As the tears fell down, his mind started to go blank. He saw black on the corner of his vision. Well, guess this is where I die. I survived more than I thought I would. He felt something rising from his stomach and something at the tip of his fingers. For a moment, he lost conscience. The 2 muggers, maybe satisfied with their beating, or perhaps they realized Izuku really had nothing, started to leave. But then, Izuku got up, and when the first mugger looked at him, his expression was different, and his eyes were yellow. Izuku had an almost maniacal grin on his bloody face, and smoke was leaving his ears. "Hey, where are you going?" Izuku asked. "You guys gave me quite the beating. Isn't it fair that I return the favor?" And before anyone could reply, Izuku opened his mouth and blew a fireball at the first guy. The guy immediately started screaming as his clothes caught fire. The second one turned to Izuku, but this time, the expression he saw was the same scared kid they attacked a few moments ago, except that his eyes were blue. "Did I? How? Sorry, I didn't want to hurt you." The second one ran to Izuku, who raised his hands in front of his face, trying to protect himself from the incoming blow. But it never came. When Izuku looked up again, the man was floating in front of him, but couldn't move, like something was holding him. "Is this?" Izuku moved up his hand, and the man went up with the movement. His eyes widened. I have a quirk." He excitedly raised his arms, which launched the man in the air. Then he hit the floor with a loud thud when Izuku checked on him. He was unconscious. "Oh no. I'm so sorry. I didn't. I." "Calm down. This isn't the time for a panic attack. We need to leave." Izuku heard a voice, extremely like his own, saying. "What? Who said that?" Izuku asked, looking around, but there was no one in sight. "In your head, dumbass. Leave first, freak out later. The police will investigate the screaming any second now. Even if it was accidental, this was illegal quirk use. And even if they let us explain, they'll call Hisashi. So, run." The voice urged him, and as scared as Izuku was at the moment, he's even more scared of Hisashi finding him. So Izuku did as the voice said and ran from the alley as fast as possible. I can question my sanity later. He ran for a good while, looking for somewhere to hide. Thankfully, his time with Hisashi and on the streets made Izuku really silent. Stealth was second nature for him, so no one saw him leaving the alley. About 10 minutes later, Izuku saw the perfect hiding spot. An old bell tower, abandoned, and, some say, haunted. No one has come here for years, so as long as Izuku is careful. After entering and making sure that he was indeed alone, he heard the voice again. "Well, that was something. Who are you? And why are you in my head?" Izuku asked between heavy breaths. "Midoriya Izuku. Who else could I be?" The voice replied. "What? But I am Midoriya Izuku." Izuku replied indignantly. The voice simply chuckled. "No shit, Sherlock. I thought I was smarter than that." Izuku let out an indignant huff at this. "I'm very smart, okay." Then he added lower. "Even if everyone says I'm not." "Come on, Zu." Izuku looked up at the nickname. "No one calls me that since Mom." He felt tears in his eyes and buried his face in his knees. "No, please, don't cry now." The voice said softly. "I'll explain what I gathered, but frankly, this is as confusing for me as it is for you." "Okay, but first, are you really me?" Izuku asked, not bothering to look up again. Because this voice obviously isn't a physical person, he can make visual contact to talk. "Yup, we both are," the voice confirmed. "I think we read about this once before." "Like a split perso personality?" Izuku replied, struggling with the big word. "That's the word. I have a theory. The other Izuku, gods. This will be confusing," confirmed. "You think we can find a mirror anywhere here?" "A mirror? I doubt it." but we can probably find a water puddle. Yesterday it rained so much. Izuku replied, getting up to look around. It didn't take long to find the puddle, thankfully clean enough for them to see their reflex. Well, this confirms part of my theory. Izuku 2 said nonchalantly, while Izuku 1 watched, stunned, raising a hand to his face. What happened to my eyes? Izuku 1 asked, looking at his blue eyes. Aren't they green? What the heck? My eyes changed color? Is this part of my quirk? A mutation? But I use telekinesis, so I am an emitter. But maybe it has to do with our splitting. If the quirk caused my mind to split, then what does that mean? Is it possible? So this is how it feels to be on the other side of my muttering. Izuku 2 interrupted Izuku's 1 thoughts. Interesting. Izuku 1 felt a hand patting his head, and when he looked up, he saw his own right hand. What the? It was easy to put 2 and 2 together. You can move my body too? Looks like I can. And look down again. Izuku 1 looked at the puddle again, and this time is right, I was yellow instead of blue. Looks like yellow is me, and blue is you. And if you mix blue and yellow, Izuku 1 started. We get green. Izuku 2 completed. This split was a little more physical than expected. Does it have anything to do with our quirk? Izuku 1 mused. I thought we were emitters, not mutation. I think we are both. Izuku 2 said. I mean, Mom was clearly an emitter, but Hisashi, I'm not so sure. He can breathe fire. This is an emission, but maybe he also had some kind of mutation. Izuku 1 mumbled. We gain nothing over thinking about it now. Let's start testing. Izuku 2 said. Also, we need a way to differentiate ourselves. Izuku 1 and Izuku 2 are too confusing. Well, yeah, but anything comes to your mind. Izuku 1 replied. Let me see. Izuku 2 replied. For the next few minutes, Izuku 1 could hear the low mumbles on his head. Wow, he wasn't kidding. Being on the other side of my mutterings is really weird. I know, Izuku 2 finally exclaimed. You are Zuku, and I am Kuzu. Zuku and Kuzu? Izuku 1 asked. Really? Yup, it's perfect. We are like 2 sides of a coin. So why not just invert our names? Though I will probably keep calling you Zu. Izuku 1 thought for a few seconds. All right, I like it. He smiled. I know we are kind of the same person, but nice to meet you, Kuzu. Likewise, Zuku, Kuzu replied, and Zuku could hear the smile in his voice. Now, how about we start testing our quirk? I thought I would never suggest it. Zuka said. Analysis time. With that, they both moved on to test their limits, starting with the telekinesis. For starters, as they thought, his quirk was like a better version of his mother's. Pulling things towards him is much easier than moving around, and he's not limited exclusively to small objects. He did launch a grown adult in the air, after all. Also, no matter what they tried, Kuzu couldn't use the telekinesis. Whenever he was in command of the body, it was like the quirk didn't exist. Testing the other side of their quirk had the same results. Kuzu can breathe fire like Hisashi, but he can also let off fire from his nose, ears, and even his eyes. Also, his hair is fireproof. They discovered it after Kuzu ended up with a bonfire in his head for 5 minutes before realizing it, and the rest of his body was really resistant to it. Like Kuzu can't use the telekinesis, Zuku can't use fire. The first round of testing ended around sunset, and with that, they had some idea of what to expect and how to start training. They decided to stay in the bell tower for the time being. That night they talked before going to sleep. Hey Zu, Kuzu started. We have a quirk now. We really have. You think we can be a hero now? Zuku asked expectantly. Maybe, but there's Hisashi, Kuzu replied. Because if it were discovered that Izuku is the son of a villain, they would never be able to be pro-heroes. But now, maybe we don't need to. What do you mean, Kuzu? Zuku asked again. We aren't useless anymore. We can defend ourselves, and maybe others, Kuzu replied. And we can catch Hisashi ourselves. You're saying? But that's too dangerous. You know how strong he is. I know. We can't dream of defeating him, Kuzu replied sadly. Not yet, at least. Then what? Oh, realization finally hit Zuku. Vigilantism. You want us to be vigilantes. That's it. We'll need to train hard. Dominate this quirk. But think about it. Kuzu said excitedly. Imagine the look on his face when we catch him with Mom's quirk. When we burn his face with his own quirk. Zuko thought about it for a few minutes in complete silence. Kuzu would think he was asleep if they weren't sharing a mind, and he couldn't hear every single of Zuko's thoughts. You know what? I'm in, Zuko finally said. We can't be pro-heroes anymore, but we can still be heroes. Great. We start preparing tomorrow. We'll need many things, Kuzu said. Like what? Zuko started. Well, shoes, for starters. Kuzu pointed, and Zuko looked down to his feet. It's been an entire year since he last wore shoes. There aren't many opportunities to get this kind of thing living on the streets, especially since his priority is food and water to survive. Some kind of mask, too. We need to hide our face. I think we should focus on my telekinesis for now, Zuko said. Until we can get fireproof clothing, we need to be careful with what we have. Good idea. But for now, you should rest, Zu. Kuzu interrupted, seeing how tired Zuko was. I'll keep watch while you sleep. What about you? Zuko asked sleepily. I can sleep later. We can always take turns. Even when you're awake, I can sleep. Kuzu replied. Now, go to sleep. If something happens, I promise to wake you up. Okay. Good night, Kuzu, Zuko said, and then immediately passed out from his exhaustion. With that, the body was fully in Kuzu's control. Kuzu, making sure that Zu wasn't about to wake up anytime soon, got up and started looking around. Glancing one more time at the water puddle, this time both his eyes were yellow. Don't worry, Zu, he whispered to himself. I'll protect you. You won't be ever alone anymore. With that, Kuzu started making his way to the highest part of the bell tower. If anyone tries to hurt Zu again, well, they'll have to get past Kuzu first. Chapter 2. Summary. I should probably wait a little longer between chapters to give myself time to continue writing. But who says I have self-control? Let's hope I can at least keep up the pace. Chapter text. Waking up the next day was an experience unlike anything Zuko had ever had in his life. Waking up was as if he had turned on the TV to a program already playing. It was the first time he consciously left Kuzo in charge. His vision was normal. He could see through his own eyes, but his limbs moved by themselves. It's an interesting feeling, to say the least, especially considering that he had access to all the senses in his body. Kuzo was carrying a stool to the bell tower. Where did he get this from? Good morning, Zu. Kuzo greeted him. How did he know Zuko was awake? Easy. We share your mind, remember? I can hear your every thought. Silly. Right. Good morning, Kuzu. Where did you get that from? Zuko asked. From our scavenging site, obviously. So, Dagobah Beach. Makes sense. Really does. It's amazing how many things in good condition they throw on that beach. Entering the bell tower, the place was completely different from last night. There were several trinkets scattered on the floor. Zuko recognized a few things, like old pots and pans, and even some clothes. Did you take all of this from the beach? Wow, how long did it take? The entire night. Kuzu shrugged. I went there while you were sleeping. He yawned. Wait, how didn't I wake up with all the movement and noise? Well, I can't say for sure, but I have a theory, Zuko said, putting the stool down. You know how I am controlling our body right now? Yeah, it's a strange feeling. Feeling my body, but not controlling it. You get used to it. Kuzu shrugged and sat down. Anyway, while I'm controlling the body, it's like you are in another part of our mind. While you were asleep, you probably went to a deeper part of our subconscious and disconnected yourself from the external world. With practice, we probably could do this consciously too. He made a motion with his fingers. Or some crap like that too. Who knows how our brain really works? You think you could wake me up if something happened? Zuko asked. Probably. Anyway, I left the heavy things to bring here later. We'll need your telekinesis for that. Kuzu yawned again. You should sleep too. If what you said is true, then I can do my things while you sleep too. You read my mind, Zu. Literally. They giggled together. But first, you should start training, Kuzu said. Do you have anything in mind? Zuko asked. It's pretty simple. Can you try using your quirk on yourself? Like, lifting yourself in the air. Noticing that he was in command of the body again, Zuko closed his eyes and tried grasping the feeling he had yesterday when he used his quirk. When he felt it in his hands, he tried to direct it to his own body and raised his arms. It took a few minutes, but he felt his feet leaving the floor. It worked, he said excitedly. I did it. Great job, Zu. Kuzu praised. We can test other things later. But for now, you need to get familiar with the feeling. So let's try like this. For the rest of the day, you only move yourself with your quirk. No walking until I wake up, okay? Zuko could see how this would help with his quirk. It made sense for him. It would also help him measure his limits. How long can he keep his quirk active? All right, let's do this. Zuko nodded. Now sleep well, Kuzu. Thanks. See you later. A few seconds later, Zuko felt as if something had switched off inside his mind. Before, even if he was quiet, he knew Kuzu was there. And just the same, he knew that at the moment, he wasn't. What a strange feeling. We will have to look into this in the future. Zuko mused to himself. He never thought before to make an entry for himself in his hero analysis notebook. But now that he has a quirk, it is a good idea to analyze it too. The problem now is to get a notebook for it. But this is a problem to think about in the future. For now, Zuko will start practicing moving around with his quirk. If he gets good on this, maybe he could really fly in the future. That would be so cool. Along with his training, he notices a few things. It's not that he needs to use his hands to move things, but it's easier if he uses them, kind of like the wizards in the movie he used to watch. They didn't need a wand to use magic, but it made it easier to concentrate. However, if he wants to rely on his quirk for locomotion, he will need to practice it without using his arms. He practiced moving around the whole day, and by the time he felt Kuzu waking up, he was starting to feel the first drawbacks of overusing his quirk: headaches. It's only a little pain at the moment, but if he keeps pushing, it will probably turn into a migraine soon. Another thing he finally noticed when Kuzu woke up was how hungry he was. He was so concentrated on his training that he didn't even hear his tummy growling like a wild animal. Kuzu laughed when he noticed and spent the next half an hour making fun of him for it. Talk about a one-track mind, he said. We are impossible. But eventually he settled down. Unfortunately, food was still a problem for them. After all, food is probably the one thing they won't find on the beach, which severely limits their options. Even if they are about to turn into vigilantes, they still don't want to be criminals. Stealing is not an option for them. Well, lucky us. There's a temporary solution. Kuzu said, today and tomorrow, a charity group will be distributing food to the homeless. A group that we fit into, whether we like it or not. Come on, just try not to draw attention to ourselves. If someone starts asking questions, it will be problematic. Leave it to me, Kuzu said confidently. All right, the body is yours, Zuko said, and just like that, he was again in the passenger seat, watching as his body moved. Though he has to hand it down to Kuzu, he moved with a confidence that Zuko never knew was possible for him. Confidence and Midoriya Izuku were two things that seemed like water and oil, but Kuzu proved that he had it on him. Like they say, no one will question if you act like you belong here. And Kuzu acted just like that. In less than an hour, Izuku had a warm soup plate in their hands. As Izuku started to eat, they had to hold down their tears because this was the best thing they had eaten in more than a year. After eating, they silently went back to their base. They'll probably stay there for a good while. Since Zuko had already overused his quirk for the day, they decided to leave the heavy lifting for tomorrow. They went to the beach and a few other things from there. Ironically enough, clothes were something relatively common to find there, especially kids' clothing. It's probably because kids grow up quickly. Most of them were in a pretty good state. He also found a good pair of red sneakers that fit him, finally. Leaving aside all the garbage there, there are plenty of things that they could sell to the recycling center, so they can at least get some money. It's not much, but for now, at least it's a plan. They returned to base after mentally separating things into trash, usable, and recyclable. That night, they both end up sleeping at the same time. Although they can rest their minds separately, they still share the same body. It is impossible to escape physical exhaustion. Since they want to keep their base a secret, they choose to go to the beach only in the morning or night. So the next day, while waiting for sunset, they start testing with Kuzu's quirk. They want to use Zuko's telekinesis to bring heavier things to their base, so Zuko won't use his quirk until night. This will also be an excellent opportunity to see how his quirk works on bigger and heavier things. As for Kuzu, his quirk is kinda straightforward. He can breathe fire like Hisashi, but there's more. Apparently, he can create fire from any part of his body, but any part that's not his mouth, nose, ears, or eyes lacks a way to thrust the fire in a burst. So he can set his hands on fire, but he cannot shoot the flames. This does not mean that it is useless, far from it. As soon as Zuku saw the fire, he began one of his muttering sessions. The flames cannot be thrown by his hands, but he can set fire to any part of the body. Perhaps he can use this in conjunction with punches and kicks to add destructive power. In conjunction with the fire breathing would make him an excellent mid-range fighter. Also, he can set his hair on fire, his whole head actually, which would be great for intimidation. Could he control the temperature? What if I used my telekinesis to control the flames? Are we completely immune to fire, or do we still get burned if it gets too hot? This must be the longest muttering session that no one interrupted. But Kuzu was just as excited as Zuku to test these theories, so of course, he wouldn't interrupt. The first thing he concentrates on is the heat. He thinks about the hottest thing he could, and immediately, he remembers a certain blonde with spiked hair and explosions. Despite not being his intention, he gets a bit angry at the memory. Wow, look, Kuzu, Zuku calls him, and when Kuzu looks at his hand, the flame had a green color. It didn't hurt him, but Kuzu could see it was hotter than usual. Then the fire went back to the normal color. What did you do? I thought about hot things. And Katsuki came to my mind. Kuzu had to explain, because although they share thoughts, they need to pay attention to hear them, and Zuku was muttering until a few seconds ago. It made me angry. So maybe it's related to your emotions? Zuku mused. Let's try again. This time Kuzu thought back to his old school, all the kids ridiculing him for being quirkless, many physically beating him up, and the teachers standing there doing nothing, some even humiliating him too. His anger this time was obvious, and his yellowish flames almost turning red reflected this. I guess you're right, Zu, Kuzu said, looking mesmerized at the flames in his hand. It still didn't burn him, but he was starting to feel it. If he holds it for too long, he'll probably get some first-degree burns. But how farther could it go? Unconsciously, Kuzu thought of Hisashi. With that came to his memory, the vision of his dead mother in that chair and her eyes floating in that pot. Kuzu, stop. He heard Zuku calling him, almost crying. When he looked down, the flames in his hands were a bright blue, but it was flickering into a deep purple color. It's hurting. Hearing this made his anger instantly disappear and be replaced by concern. Shit. As soon as the flame returned to normal, he shook his hand, putting out the fire. Zu. I'm fine, Zuku said, but Kuzu could hear the tears in his words. Inspecting his hands, they were burned, not too unlike Hisashi's burns. This was at least a second-degree burn. Zuku's tears were probably more related to the memory than pain. Still, Kuzu felt bad for causing it. The silver lining is that he was testing the fire in his left hand, so they didn't hurt their main hand. Sorry, Zu, Kuzu said. Okay, blue flames and higher are too much for us, Zuka said after calming down. Let's try to keep the anger in check. It will be best, Kuzu agreed. After that, they tore up one of the clean clothes they managed to get and used it to wrap the wound. They did some more tests on the quirk, but most of them will have to be left for when they can try somewhere where they won't cause a fire in the entire quarter. After they get anything useful, they could probably use the beach for that. When the sun finally set, they went to the beach and started to work. As it turns out, Zuku's telekinesis is strong enough to lift most of the furniture on the beach, but not too many things at once. They'll have to train more for that. They carry an old but still good coach, a mattress, cabinets. They also get an old stove that looks like it can be repaired, among other things. It takes them a few trips to carry everything, but by the end of it all, the place is finally starting to feel like home. Izuku feels a kind of pride thinking about it. Maybe things are finally starting to look up for them. During the following weeks, they focus on various things. For starters, Izuku wants to keep studying. It is not too difficult to find a library with internet access where he could study online. The hard part was convincing the person in charge of the library why an 8-year-old child was going to the library alone. Kuzu tells a rehearsed sob story about how Izuku lost his parents in a villain attack. Partially true, thank you very much, and Izuku was sent to foster care. However, his caretakers were horrible and abusive, so he ran away, but he still wanted to continue studying. By the end of the story, the librarian, a kind middle-aged lady, was crying fat tears. She ended up offering Izuku a part-time job. In exchange for helping her keep the library clean and organized, she got Izuku a library card and permission to use the library as much as he wanted. She always had a snack ready for him and paid for his help. It's clearly an excuse for her to help Izuku. Frankly, if she thought he would accept, she would probably offer to foster him, but she never brought it up, thankfully. It worked out much better than they were expecting, and despite the guilt Izuku felt for deceiving the kind librarian, everything worked out in the end. From there, Izuku quickly finds free online classes to continue his education. It is not the most renowned online school, but Aldera was nothing great either. The second thing they focus on is training their body. This one is handled by Kuzu. Since they share a mind, anything that one of them learns, both can use. With training, they learn to use their hands ambidextrously, so they could do two separate things simultaneously. This makes them really good at multitasking. For them, a pretty normal thing is Kuzu working out with a book, notebook, and pens floating in front of his face, while Zuka studies. And last but not least, training their quirks. Because as serious as they are about being vigilantes, they are not idiots. To try to fight with a newly acquired quirk is to ask for death, either from them or from others. It is only a few months later, with an improvised disguise, a skull mask that they bought cheaply at a costume store, and a lot of nervousness, that they go out on their first patrol. Chapter 3. Chapter Text. It was a simple patrol night, nothing weird. It was strangely peaceful, to be honest, but it's not like he never had calm nights. Maybe I can finish earlier today and go home take a nap. But then he got a call from Tsukauchi. Spoke too soon. Sighing, he answered the call, not that he didn't know what it was about. Tsukauchi only calls for two things. So either everyone is dying or… Eraserhead. It's them again. Yup, just as he thought. Word is this time. And how many? Shoyuta asked calmly. I'm sending the location. It's about 5 minutes from where you are. Tsukauchi replied, and a few seconds later, he received the location. 7 muggers, all tied in chains and hanging from the wall. No burnings this time. Well, what do you know? On my way. With that, Shoyuta hung up the call and started running. Poltergeist and Ifrit, a famous vigilante duo from these parts that Shoyuta is infuriatingly familiar with. They appeared about a year ago and started simply by stopping petty thieves and the like. But then, with the experience, they started building their confidence. And with confidence, they started going after bigger fish. They still don't try going after full-fledged villains, but something tells Shoyuta this will change soon. Barely 5 minutes after starting running, Shoyuta saw the scene. Just as Tsukauchi said, 7 men hanging on the wall chained. No signal of burning neither in the walls nor the men. So this time, it was only Poltergeist. Ignoring the thieves calling for help, Shoyuta instead took off and started running. With luck, he'll still be able to catch up with him before he disappears again. It's only been a few weeks that Shoyuta started investigating the duo, but he has yet to see one of them in person. They are slippery, and it is by pure chance that he finds them. About 10 minutes following the direction the vigilante was last seen, Shoyuta literally bumped into him. The only thing he sees is a white cloak and a skull mask. Then immediately, he activates Erasure and sends his capture scarf, trapping each hand on the fabric. He feels nothing when he goes to the feet. Looking closely, Shoyuta sees the trick. The vigilante uses the cloak to disguise his actual height, floating with his quirk under it to seem bigger. Clever, and worrisome too, because looking at his actual height, this kid is even younger than he expected. To his credit, the vigilante doesn't panic. He simply looks at Shuta's red, glowing eyes and floating hair. Under the cloak and the mask, Shoyuta sees a pair of blue eyes. Did you disable my quirk? A voice, too young to be there, asked. That's a really cool quirk. Erasure, Shoyuta said simply. How old are you, kid? I'm 8, Shoyuta tried his best to keep his face neutral at this response. Eraserhead. Right. Since you're holding me like a criminal, I suppose you know who I am, right? The kid said, still too calm about the situation. Poltergeist. Shoyuta replied. A vigilante. Yeah, thought so. Poltergeist replied. The mask was hiding his expression, but Shoyuta had the feeling that he was smiling. Any way to convince you to let me go? Kid, you shouldn't be there. Shoyuta tried arguing. Is the other one as young as you? At this, the kid closed his eyes. He's asking about you, Ifrit. The kid said, looking above Shuta's shoulder. Shoyuta looked over his shoulder, surprised, but there was no one there. When he turned back to the kid, he saw a red glow coming from his throat and only had the time to let him go before a flame burst came from the kid's mouth. Sorry, Eraser-san, but we need to go, the kid replied, but his posture was completely different from a moment ago. Shoyuta tried activating Erasure again, but the kid took off his cloak and shoved it on Shuta's face before running away. When Shoyuta freed himself from the fabric, the only trail the kid left was a burning skull mask on the floor. The kid probably flew away. Shoyuta could catch him if he wanted. But with a kid this young, this will be a bad idea. Frankly, if a kid this young felt that the only way to bring justice was by doing it himself, well, society, heroes, and authorities must have failed him too much already. This case just went from slightly troublesome to a complete headache. But after this night, there's no way Shoyuta will let anyone else take over this case. On the other hand, Shoyuta caught Poltergeist, the first vigilante, who was supposed to have a telekinesis quirk. But then, he breathed fire on Shuta's face, and before he shoved his cloak on Shuta's face, Shoyuta is sure he saw yellow eyes behind the kid's mask, but the kid's eyes were blue. His posture was also completely different. There is also what the kid said. We need to go. He said we, not I. Like there was more than one person. Looks like they are looking at this case from the wrong angle. Maybe Ifrit and Poltergeist are the same person after all. People with dual quirks are not something unheard of. But why the distinction? Looking at the cloak on his hand, Shoyuta quickly recognized it. It belonged to an arsonist that was caught a few weeks ago. Every witness said that the man used a cloak like that, but he wasn't wearing it when he was caught. The one who caught the incendiary was Ifrit. It seems he decided to keep the cloak as a souvenir. The cloak is fireproof. The fact that Poltergeist was wearing a fireproof cape further reinforces that the two are the same. But still, Shoyuta will have to further investigate it. And maybe he could give the cloak back to the kid. It's not like he had any use to a fireproof cloak. As they flew away from the pro hero, Izuku made sure to take as many detours as he could before going back home, just to make sure they weren't being followed. But as soon as they were certain they weren't, Kuzu started complaining. Damn it, I love that cloak. He started saying, who was that hobo? I never heard of a pro hero like him. He must be underground. It's pretty hard to find info on them after all. Zuka chimed in. You must be right. Kuzu relented. But where will I get another fireproof cloak now? Maybe he'll give it back to us. Zuka tried. Why would he do that? Kuzu replied. If we see him again, I doubt we'll escape as easily. I don't know, Kuzu. I think he let us go today. It sure is weird. Kuzu sighed. If he wanted to catch us, I'm sure he could. But why not? He seemed quite surprised when I said my age. Zuka mused. Maybe he didn't want to arrest a kid. It must be the case. Kuzu replied. What else could be? He wants to help us? A few seconds of silence stretched, then they started laughing. Fat chance, Zuka said, trying to control his laughter. An adult wanting to help us. You're a comedian, Kuzu. I know, right? Kuzu was in no better situation. The moment he finds who we really are, we end up either in foster care, Tartarus, or worse of all, back to Hisashi. If he wants to try to gain our trust, good luck for him, Zuku said, sobering from his laugh. But until we stop Hisashi, there's no way we'll stop. You said it, Zu. Kuzu replied. If they want to stop us, it's better to bring All Might or Endeavor. I wouldn't be opposed to kicking Endeavor in the face, though. Zuka mused. Now you're talking, Kuzu replied. Anyway, we should probably skip our next patrols, at least until we can get a hold of who is this hero. Something tells me we'll be seeing him again, Zuko explained. No, Kuzu whined. It was my turn to patrol. Don't be such a baby. I'll let you have the two next ones. Zuka tried to appease him. But I want to go. You're such a battle junkie, Kuzu. Zuku shook his head. How about I let you choose the dinner today? Did that guy really pay what he promised? Kuzu asked. To the last yen, Zuku replied. The good thing about making their name is that people stopped underestimating them based on their age. After getting famous as Poltergeist, Zuku started doing the occasional job here and there, usually using his analysis skills. Of course, he makes sure he's not working for villains. Usually, he helps some other vigilante or the like with analyzing villains. They pay well enough for them to live in peace at least. Not having to pay rent surely helps. All right, then let's eat Katsudon. Kuzu cheered. Why am I not surprised? Zuka teased. Because you would suggest the same. Kuzu teased back. I'm you, remember? Yeah, you said it. Zuka waves him off. Let's go then. Yay. Kuzu cheered as they left the building. With that, they quickly left their home/base and went to eat. They can work on identifying the pro hero tomorrow. It takes another week until Shoyuta runs into the little vigilante again. This time he was looking for them. From what Tsukachi said before, they take turns patrolling every day, which means that each one patrol every other day. But after their first meeting, the vigilante vanished for a week, maybe to look for information about Shoyuta. They know his hero name and quirk. There's not much else on the internet about him, though. It's really hard to find information on underground heroes, after all, as it should be. But this night, it's actually pretty easy to find him, almost as if the kid wanted to be found. Which, considering the note that literally said, "Keep your eyes up, Eraser-san," that one of the unconscious tugs that Ifrit defeated earlier had, it's probably, in fact, what they wanted. And well, Shoyuta indeed found them when he was looking up. Specifically, he saw a burning hand waving at him from up a building right after he stopped a mugging. When Shoyuta climbed up the building, he saw the kid sitting down on the edge of the building swinging his feet. Hey, Eraser-san. The kid waved at him. Shoyuta saw a long chain wrapped around each of his arms, probably used in conjunction with Poltergeist's telekinesis, functioning similarly to Shuta's capture scarf. Good to see you. Would you kindly give me back my cloak? I like that cloak. Shoyuta simply shrugged and threw the cloak to the kid. The kid took it, then looked confused to Shoyuta. It looks like this isn't what he was expecting. Answer one question in return. Shoyuta said to the kid that was carefully inspecting the cloak. I didn't put any tracker on it, don't worry. All right, the kid said, staring at Shoyuta suspiciously. Shoot. Ifrit and Poltergeist. Are you both? Shoyuta asked. What do you think? The kid raised his left hand, and the chain started to dance around. Then he raised his right hand, and a flame appeared on it. Looking at the kid's eyes, one eye was blue, and the other yellow. It was different from what Shoyuta saw last time. But then, the chain stopped, and his eyes were both yellow again. Shoyuta had a good idea of what this was about, but he still wanted to confirm it. Is this the part where you arrest me, or does it come later? The kid asked him. I'm not arresting you, kid. Shoyuta replied. Can I talk to the other one? Wow, a single hint, and you caught everything? The kid said, laughing. Not today, Eraser-san. But if you don't want to arrest me, I'm taking my leave. Having said that, the kid simply jumped off the roof. Shoyuta ran to the border and looked down, but the kid was nowhere to be seen. Still, this was far from a failure for Shoyuta. He at least got a few things from the kid. Ifrit and Poltergeist are, in fact, the same person. The kid must have split personality. They are aware of each other and can probably talk among themselves. And each personality has one quirk. Or maybe they have one quirk, and each personality has access to half of it. The point is, the kid has two personalities, and they are both vigilantes. It seems like their eyes change color based on which one controls the body, and they can share the control if the heterochromia is anything to go by. Comparing this encounter with the last one, Poltergeist will probably be easier to talk to. But it seems like Ifrit is really protective of his brother. Gaining their trust won't be easy, but that has never stopped Shoyuta before. Chapter 4. Chapter text. That night on the rooftop was far from the last time Shoyuta saw the kid. At least once a week, Shoyuta would meet the kid on the same rooftop. At first, it was only Ifrit that talked to him. But after a few months and a bit of bribery, Shoyuta soon discovered that food worked wonders with this kid. Ifrit finally relaxed enough to let Shoyuta talk with Poltergeist. The first time they really talked, Shoyuta was surprised. The kid was as enthusiastic as he was shy. He asked at least 20 questions about Shuta's quirk in less than a minute, and Shoyuta struggled to answer all of them in the end. But Shoyuta could easily see how smart Poltergeist is. They talked a few more times, but Shoyuta still didn't make too much progress with them. They always dodge any question regarding themselves, and Shoyuta doesn't want to try pushing them for answers either. Only a year later, Shoyuta would learn something new about the kids. They were sitting in their usual place, Poltergeist happily munching a sandwich Shoyuta brought for him when the kid shared something with Shoyuta. It started with a simple question. Eraserhead-san, the kid asked tentatively. Shoyuta already told them his name, but Poltergeist is too polite not to use his hero name, and Ifrit is too much of a brat to use it. Yes, Shoyuta replied, giving him his full attention. Do you have? The kid started but stopped himself. He seemed to discuss with himself, or maybe with Ifrit if he should make the question. A few seconds later, he looked at Shoyuta again, and he had one eye of each color, which meant that they were sharing the control body. They only did that when they were fighting or wanted to both take part in a talk. "I burner," he continued. His curt tone made it clear that this was Ifrit talking. "Do you know anything about him?" At that, Shoyuta raised an eyebrow. "I'm not giving you information on such a dangerous villain, kid," Shoyuta replied. "Believe me, Eraser Dad," Ifrit replied. "We know how dangerous that monster is." "We aren't asking what you know," Poltergeist said right after. "Only if you know something." Frankly, Shoyuta didn't know much. Shoyuta leads this case too, but finding anything on the villain is almost impossible. The villain usually attacks once every month. His victims are people of any age, gender, or ethnicity. The only similarity between them is that they all had green eyes. He probably has a fire quirk since he burns his victims' faces after he has taken out their eyes, but while they are still alive. From his M.O., he likely keeps the eyes that he plucks out as trophies. But that's all. They have no suspects. The villain is very good at covering his tracks. "We don't have much." It's all that Shoyuta replied, but the kid still nodded at him. Shoyuta noticed him clenching his fists. "We know we can't catch him yet," Ifrit started saying. "As much as I hate to admit it, he's too much for us." "But he killed Mom," Poltergeist continued. "And for that, we can't forgive him. He also hurt Zu." Ifrit let the nickname escape, but Shoyuta didn't comment on it. "For that, I can't forgive him." Then he turned to Shoyuta. "Do you think you can catch him in 1 year?" "1 year?" Shoyuta asked. "In 1 year, on our 10th birthday. If he hasn't been caught yet, then we will act." Poltergeist, or Zu, as Ifrit just called him, explained. "We decided that when we started acting as vigilantes. And they are completely serious about this. I won't try to stop you kids," Shoyuta started. "But I hope that if it comes to it, that by then, you will trust me enough to let me help you." "We'll see," Ifrit said, nodding. "We need to go now." "Thanks for the sandwich, Eraserhead-san," Poltergeist said, bowing. "It was delicious." Then, as they always do, they jumped down from the building. By now, Shoyuta doesn't even bother trying to check on them. Well, Shoyuta has new things to check, though. The kid is the son of one of the victims of the eye burner. The villain has been active for 10 years already. This kid is 9 years old and has acted as a vigilante for at least 2 years. So this year's victims can't be the ones. But even so, he still has at least 7 years worth of victims that he needs to check. Still, if the kids want revenge, then they must have been old enough to remember their mother clearly. So it's probably been someone between 3 to 5 years ago. With a margin of error, it is best to check between 2 and 6 years. So he needs to find any women that died during this period that had a son. The kid is probably missing. He can work with that. On the way back home, Zuko couldn't help but be worried about their earlier talk. "Do you think we told him too much?" "Maybe. But even if he somehow discovers our name, he won't know Hisashi is the eye burner," Kuzu argued. "Maybe he should," Zuko almost whispered. "How many more will Hisashi kill until someone gets him?" "You want to trust him, don't you, Zu?" Kuzu said gently, but he still felt Zuko flinching. "I know we said we wouldn't trust someone that easily anymore," he started, "but I can't help but hope that he's being honest." Kuzu completed it when Zuko stopped talking. "You don't need to explain yourself, Zu. I know how you feel." "I'm sorry," Zuko replied. "You don't need to apologize either." Kuzu continued. I want to believe in him too. But we can't. Not yet. Do you have something in mind? Zuko asked. Maybe. Kuzu replied. We'll give him a chance. One more year. We'll know what he really wants by then. Okay. And if in the end, we can't trust him yet, then we cut all the ties. You already analyzed pretty much his whole combat style. Even if we can't defeat him. If he wants to catch us. Zuko giggled. Good luck for him. With the discussion settled, they went to sleep. This case is even more complicated than Shoyuta thought. Why is it so hard to locate a kid? When Shoyuta got home, instead of going to sleep as he would usually, he went straight to check on the files related to the eye burner case. He skidded through the victims in the period of time, but he found much more than he was expecting. As much as the eye burner attacked anyone with green eyes, most of his victims were women. Kimitoshi, Hoki, Fumitaka, Koki, Midoriya, Yasukatsu, Toyakuni, Reigo, and some others were all women who had children. Shoyuta went through each kid's quirk too, but none of them had a quirk that could belong to the vigilantes. Fire quirks are rare enough as it is. A combination of fire and telekinesis is even more so. Looking deeper for the parents, he found 5 possibilities. Hoki had a minor fire quirk. Her fingers were basically a lighter. Toyakuni could control small fires but couldn't create them. Reigo could move small objects so long they weren't more than 2 meters from her. Midoriya could pull small objects in her direction. Yasukatsu could make light objects float. A mutation could make any of these quirks strong enough to be the vigilante, but none of them looked like it could be. Checking the other parent, Shoyuta found something interesting. Midoriya Hisashi, quirk, fire breath, pretty self-explanatory. So the Midoriyas had a fire and a telekinesis quirk. Could it be? Shoyuta checked on their son. They had only one, but his quirk. Well, there wasn't one. He's listed as quirkless. And dead. Checking on, Shoyuta found something really weird. Midoriya Inko was found dead by her neighbor. Her son, Midoriya Izuku, was the first one to find the body, but at the time, 5-year-old kid went into shock when he saw her body. After that, he lived with his father and disappeared from the map. It said that the kid was homeschooled. But then, 1 year later, a fire happened in their home. It says that the father wasn't at home at the moment, and no one knows what caused it. But a single body was found, too burnt to be recognized, but judging by the size, it was declared Midoriya Izuku. After that, the father moved to another house. There's something strange with this case. Shuta's guts are screaming at him. The Midoriyas are, at the moment, Shuta's best lead, both for the vigilante and the eye burner. Still, Shoyuta will focus for now on keeping building trust with the kid. Hopefully, 2 years are enough for the kid to tell him the truth. Chapter 5. Chapter Text. In early July, a year after the conversation about the eye burner, Shoyuta knew his time was running out, but he still didn't have enough to know who the serial killer really was. His investigations into the Midoriyas did not bear much fruit either. Without a valid reason, Shoyuta cannot reopen the investigation into the child's death. And unfortunately, there is not a single mark on Hisashi's name to justify an investigation. Shoyuta has not yet confirmed with the problem child, but he is 90% sure that the little vigilante is Midoriya Izuku. Probably stress and trauma caused a forced manifestation of his quirk. The personality disorder likely has the same cause. The point is Shoyuta will meet the kid today, as usual, and he is debating with himself whether he should bring up the case. To his misfortune, the kid beat him to it. Hey, Eraser. Oh, great. Ifrit is always harder to talk to. It's like Shoyuta is always walking on eggshells with him. I can hear the gears on your head from the other building. What's on your mind? You, Shoyuta replied before thinking. Me? Poltergeist? Both, Ifrit asked, smirking. Both, Shoyuta replied. The absence of his usual sarcastic remark made Ifrit drop his smirk, realizing it must be serious. Shoyuta sighed before continuing. You know, my offer still stands. I meant what I said. I'm sure you meant. Ifrit sighed, closing his eyes. But still. Shoyuta already brought this up a few times. The offer to adopt the kid. The first time he offered, Ifrit laughed as if it was the funniest thing he had ever heard in his life. Shoyuta simply dropped it at the time. But after the third offer, he knew Shoyuta was serious. To Shuta's surprise, the one who denied it was Poltergeist, putting in the kid's words, "You don't know who we are. If you knew it, I'm sure you wouldn't want us." Shoyuta tried many times to assure the kid he didn't care who the kid was, but it was useless. Shoyuta still brought the offer a few times, but the kid never accepted. A few more days, 2 weeks at most. Poltergeist snapped Shoyuta of his thoughts. After that, if you still accept us. Shoyuta didn't need an explanation to know what the kid was talking about. It was time for the kid's plan. He'll go after the eye burner. Problem child. Shoyuta called softly. As I said before, I won't stop you. But dash. Would this help your investigation? The kid interrupted Shoyuta, pulling a portable camera from under his cloak. We've been debating it, and we want you to have it. Shoyuta took the camera and started looking through it. The first image was of a house. The second one had a focus on the house number. The third one had the street name. The fourth photo was a hand-drawn map, showing a house with 5 rooms, a living room, a kitchen, 3 bedrooms, and a bathroom, probably the house in the photos. The fifth image was inside the house. It looked like a perfectly normal house. One would think that at least 3 people live there. He lives alone, never married again. Shoyuta heard Ifrit saying. Sometimes I wonder if he really loved her. Shoyuta kept scanning through the pictures, detailing the house's layout, until he stopped on the first suspicious thing. The photo of an open drawer, several surgical instruments stored in it. Certainly not in the right condition. The next photo had a closed door with too many locks on it. 5 locks and 3 padlocks. Shoyuta watched the details for a few seconds, but just before moving on to the next one, he felt a tug on his scarf. He saw the kid looking at him with a troubled look on his face. The next ones are disturbing, Poltergeist said worriedly. Shoyuta saw many disturbing things in his life, but he had to admit it. The kid was right. The next few photos are disturbing. The photos, which Shoyuta assumed belonged to the room with the locked door, showed several jars arranged on shelves like pickle jars. But what the jars contained were eyes, specifically green eyes. Like all the others, the photos showed various details, including close-ups showing the jars up close and the labels with the victims' names on them. The last photo was of a jar separated from the others. This jar was labeled Midoriya Inko. When Shoyuta looked at the child again, he saw tears falling from his blue eye. The yellow eye was not crying, but he seemed no less troubled by the memory. Putting the camera aside for a moment, Shoyuta knelt in front of the kid and wrapped him in a hug. The kid buried his head in Shuta's scarf, and he could hear his sobs. Midoriya Hisashi. Ifrit said, full of venom. That's his name. I is th that eno enough. Poltergeist stuttered. CCA can you? I can. Shoyuta replied. Thank you for trusting me, kid. He added a few seconds later. We'll catch him, I promise you. They stood like that for a few more minutes until Shoyuta noticed the child's breathing quietening and the hiccups stopping. Then the kid pulled out of the hug. This time both his eyes were yellow. He was already exhausted. Ifrit explained. We've been discussing this for a few days, and I know he didn't sleep last night. I'll have to make a few calls, Shoyuta said, getting up. But 2 weeks is enough to prepare a raid. I'll make sure he's caught. Be careful, Eraser, Ifrit said, turning around to leave. I know I don't need to say this, but I would know how dangerous that man is. The next part is barely a whisper. I lived with him. Meet me here again in a week, okay? Shoyuta said, and the kid nodded. After that, they left. Shoyuta didn't bother leaving. He immediately got his phone and called Sakachi. Eraserhead, you never call me. What happened? I burner. We got him now, Shoyuta answered. I'm going there immediately to discuss. But I have in my hands more than enough proofs of his identity. You what? Sakachi replied. Shoyuta is sure the man just spat his coffee. All right, I'll be waiting. Don't bother knocking. The door will be unlocked. With that, Shoyuta hung up and went straight to the police station. When asked about his sources, Shoyuta simply said he had found a new informant. Sakachi, who was already involved in the case and knew about Shuta's relationship with the vigilantes, did not question. The evidence was all there and clearly not edited footage. After much discussion, a few phone calls, and a week to prepare everything, a small team was assembled consisting of Eraserhead, 3 other underground heroes, Sakachi, and some policemen. A small support team has also been set up to evacuate the neighbors if Hisashi tries to start a fire to use as a smokescreen. The raid's objective was simple: surround the house and apprehend Midoriya Hisashi. With everything decided, the date for the attack was set for July 15th. The day before the attack, Shoyuta met with the child once again. He handed a tracker to the child. All he had to do was press the button on it, and Shoyuta would automatically receive the location. He also made the vigilantes promise not to try to participate in the attack. And after all the preparation, the day of the attack finally arrived. On the night of July 15th, Midoriya Hisashi's house was surrounded. The attack began without any problems. The first squad, led by Eraserhead, efficiently broke down the front door and stormed in. The house's layout seemed to be exactly like the map the kid made, but no one inside. Eraserhead went for the first room while another hero checked the kitchen. "Clear," he said after checking it. "Clear," another one yelled. "Clear," came from the kitchen. "Clear," from the main bedroom. The only one left was the locked room. Even knowing what was there, Eraserhead was already dreading what he would find. "Password. You're it," Eraserhead said to the other hero. Password. His quirk was a minor telekinesis, 2 meters radius. Practically useless in combat, but perfect for opening any lock. The hero himself is also one of the greatest proofs that a hero should not be judged by his quirk. On it, putting his hand above the locks, they started opening one by one. After opening it, Eraserhead was quick to kick the door and jump inside, Erasure already activated and scanning the room. Again, it was just like the kid's photo, tins of jars with green eyes floating around. But again, no one was inside. "Clear," Eraserhead announced, deactivating Erasure. "Damn, where is he?" A few minutes later, the entire squadron was tearing the house apart, looking for clues. The jars were all secured as evidence, as were the medical instruments. The house is obviously the right one. All the evidence against the eye burner is there, but no sign of Midoriya Hisashi. He should be here. There is no way he could have learned about the attack unless he had a source in the police. But even if he had, the raid was kept secret from everyone who was not participating in it. No, he was in the house, but somehow he managed to escape. The only way this could have happened would be looking at the display stand in the center of the room, where Midoriya Inko's eyes were. Eraserhead saw a carpet. He kicked the display and examined it. "Son of a," he called his squad. A trapdoor he must have escaped through. Looking inside, he found a long tunnel. It was impossible to tell where it would come out, but it was clearly straight to the end. "Password. With me, we will check the tunnel. The rest follow our signal from the surface." After a few nods, Eraserhead jumped down and started following the tunnel, careful of any possible ambushes. Probably, halfway through the tunnel, Eraserhead received another signal. But this one wasn't from anyone on his squad, and he knew exactly who it was from. "Damn it, let's hurry," Eraserhead yelled and started running. Password followed him in shock. He had never seen Eraserhead lose his composure like this. But how could Shoyuta not lose his composure? Because this signal came from the tracker, Shoyuta left with the kid. And receiving this signal today can only mean a single thing. His kid, is facing the eye burner and probably alone against him. Shoyuta never ran that fast in all his life. Chapter 6. Chapter Text. Izuku is many things. Vigilante, trouble magnet, trauma box, walking museum of scars, to name a few. However, a liar is not one of them. So when they promised his dad Eraserhead that they would not try to participate in the attack on Hisashi's house, they did indeed keep their promise. However, there was no way they wouldn't watch closely. Eraserhead probably knew that, so he didn't make them promise to stay away, just not to participate. When the attack started, Izuku was there watching everything while hiding nearby. However, after a few minutes, when there was no sign of conflict, Kuzu began to get a bad feeling. Until everything clicked. There is no way Hisashi never prepared for a situation like that. The house probably had a hidden escape route prepared. The only thing that stopped Zuku from having a breakdown right there. Because how could he have let something so simple go by? This way Hisashi will run away again. And it's his fault. Was Kuzu already starting to run behind the house, still careful to stay away from the police and heroes nearby? Surprisingly, it was not that difficult to find the traces of an underground passage. If they had been looking for it, the heroes would probably have found it by now. Looking at the direction of the trail, Zuko deduced that it would lead to the construction site a few blocks away and immediately began to fly there, praying that he was right, because if not, Hisashi would surely have escaped. Izuku arrived at the place just in time to notice something moving on the ground and hide. They saw a hidden trapdoor open, and a very familiar figure came out from inside. Midoriya Hisashi. The man in question got out of the trapdoor, closed it, and covered it with some cement bags, then dusted himself and started walking away. Well, it's all or nothing now. Zuko and Kuzu have spent 3 years waiting for the day when they would meet this man again. And now is the time. Justice/revenge. Izuku sat cross-legged on a nearby scaffolding and took off their shoes. They wouldn't survive this battle. Then called the man monster. Hisashi. Hisashi turned at him, and seeing the skull mask, he grinned. Oh, the famous vigilante came for me. He asked, I feel so loved today. You won't be grinning for long, Kuzu said, then threw his mask away. They want the man monster to know who they are. Brat? How? Hisashi asked, then looked at his eyes and saw one blue and one yellow. Your eyes. The only thing worth you had. And you lost it. Shut up. You won't escape again, Hisashi. Kuzu yelled at him. They pulled the tracker eraser head, gave them from his cloak, and pressed the button. Let's hope he arrives on time. Calling help. The monster provoked. You're still the same crybaby. Oh no, Hisashi. You don't get it. Kuzu said. The backup is not to save us, Zuko said in a low tone. It's to save you, Kuzu completed before jumping down in front of Hisashi and discarding his cloak. Hisashi looked at his face for a moment and took a step back. Izuku's face was perfectly split into two expressions. His left side had a sad expression but had a smile on his face and tears coming from his blue eye. His right side had a feral grin, the yellow eye sparkling in anticipation. It was like looking at two different persons at the same time. Prepare yourself, Hisashi, they said in unison. Today, we bring justice/vengeance. Saying that, Kuzu threw the tracker at Hisashi's face, aiming at the eyes. Hisashi threw a hand in front of his face to block the projectile, but that was exactly what Kuzu was aiming for. The moment Hisashi lowered his arms, Kuzu was already in front of him, drop-kicking him in the chest, both feet glowing with green flames. The monster's eye widened at the attack, and he took a few steps back trying to recover his breath, then opened his mouth and threw a flame wave at the kid, who took it head-on. Hisashi grinned and was about to taunt the kid when he felt a kick to his chin, falling to the floor. He looked at the, now doing a handstand with his leg outstretched in a kick, kid who didn't look fazed by his burning clothes and the small burns on his face. What was that? You should be quirkless, Hisashi screamed, but then felt a chain wrap around his legs. We should also be dead, but we aren't, Zuko said, with his hand stretched and the chains dancing in his arms. He pulled on the chains, knocking Hisashi to the ground and pulling him close. But Hisashi was tougher than he looked. He opened his mouth again and aimed his flames on the chains, which soon started to melt by the heat. You damn brat, Hisashi yelled again as he stood up. When I am done with you, you will wish you had died in the dark alley you crawled through to get away from me. Izuku didn't reply anymore. Instead, Kuzu summoned his flames again, this time even hotter, the yellow flames glowing even brighter than the green ones. He went to Hisashi again and punched him in the arm. The fire burned straight through his sleeve and left a first-degree burn on his upper arm. Seeing that, Kuzu smiled. He won't suffer any burn unless he spends 10 minutes holding his yellow flames. This means that Hisashi's fire resistance is weaker than his own. It makes sense, for as hot as Hisashi's flames are, they aren't even close to Kuzu's. Let's up the heat a bit more, Kuzu said, holding both of Hisashi's arms and summoning his flames again, this time bright blue. Hisashi's eyes widened when he started feeling his skin burning. So, Hisashi, how does it feel to be burned? Then he opened his mouth and breathed a, just as bright blue, fire wave on the man's face, who started screaming in pain. What's the problem? Didn't you do the same to Mom? He asked, throwing another punch in his chin. Then, Zuku held him with his telekinesis and threw him up before flying after him. "This is Mom's quirk," Zuko said, looking the monster in the eyes. He held Hisashi in place, keeping his mouth shut. "I couldn't have asked for a better quirk." Then he dropped Hisashi, looking at his hands, then at the man falling to the ground again. Izuku started remembering everything the man did to him. Kuzu felt his anger spiking. Zuku felt only sadness for what the man had become. But both emotions were at their maximum. Looking at his right hand, Kuzu called on his flames once more. This time, they were a bright purple. "This has already gone too far," Kuzu said and heard Zuku humming in agreement. "All right, let's put an end to this." Then Zuku let go of his telekinesis, and they dropped after Hisashi, already aiming their knees at his chest. Shoyuta found another trapdoor at the end of the tunnel, no doubt leading out. He tried opening it, but there was something heavy holding it down. Damn it, Shoyuta doesn't have time to waste with this. His kid, is facing a villain and serial killer right at this moment. Shoyuta needs to get there before it's too late. Shoyuta started punching the door, but it didn't budge. What the heck is holding this thing? Damn it, why doesn't Shoyuta carry explosives with him? He heard a panting sound behind him. That's right, Password is with him. He's a professional at that. "Explosives? Do you have it?" he asked. The hero gave him a skeptical look. "Hurry up. I need to get up there now." This was enough to convince the other hero, who gave Shoyuta a small stick explosive cluster and a detonator. Shoyuta didn't waste any time sticking it to the trapdoor and taking a few steps back. Less than he should, he pressed the detonator. As soon as moonlight came through a cloud of dust, Shoyuta climbed out of the tunnel, leaving a coughing Password behind him. Leaving the tunnel, Shoyuta immediately started looking for the kid. "Poltergeist! Ifrit!" He started screaming for them. "Where are you, kid?" Shoyuta was searching frantically when he saw a shadow right above him. He saw someone falling when he looked up and barely had time to dodge. When he looked at the man on the floor, his eyes widened. This was Midoriya Hisashi. He was completely beaten and full of burnings. He probably had broken bones, if not from the fight, from the fall he just took. The man looked at Shoyuta and raised his hand. "Help him dash." Hisashi didn't have time to finish his sentence before someone landed on his stomach with both knees. Shoyuta had to hide his face from the impact, but when he looked, he saw a mop of green hair, a face covered in freckles, upper chest exposed because of his burnt clothes. But besides that, the kid only had minor burns in his body. Shuta's eyes lingered on the many scars on the kid's chest for a moment, but then looked up and saw a teary blue and an angry yellow eye. There's no doubt about who the kid is. This is Ifrit and Poltergeist. Midoriya Izuku. The kid grabbed the man by the collar of his shirt and brought his face closer. Then he raised his right hand, which was glowing a bright purple from his flames, and started bringing it down to the man's face. "Kid," Shoyuta said, and the kid's hand stopped just an inch from the man's face. The kid looked up and saw Shoyuta, then looked once more at the man's face, then at his hands, and dropped the man back to the floor. The man hit his head on the floor with a loud thud. Hisashi wasn't conscious anymore. The purple glow on the kid's hand slowly dimmed. "Eraserhead-san." He heard the kid's voice as the kid looked at him again. He didn't look sad or angry anymore, only lost. "Does he deserve to live?" Poltergeist asked him. He looked at the man one more time and brought his left arm above his eyes. "After everything he did, why shouldn't I pluck his eyes out, as he did to Mom?" Then the kid grabbed his collar again and brought him closer. Shoyuta saw a purple glow on his throat as he started talking again. "Shuta-san," Ifrit said, "why shouldn't I burn him alive, as he did to Mom, as he did so many times to Zu?" Then the kid looked Shoyuta in the eyes and asked, "Why, Dad? Why does this man get to live, but not Mom?" And this question almost broke Shuta's heart. How was he supposed to answer this? Shuta's answer will be what decides if this kid will dirt his hands with blood or not. Does Hisashi deserve to live? Frankly, probably not. And even if he does live, the man will be forever locked in Tartarus. But this kid, his kid, shouldn't have this monster's blood on his hands. "Izuku," Shoyuta said, and the kid looked at him in shock, then brought a hand to his face, apparently remembering that he wasn't wearing a mask. Maybe this man deserves to die. Maybe he doesn't. But one thing you can be certain of, I won't love any less regardless of your decision. And these must have been the right words because the kid drops the man again and jumps at Shoyuta, hugging him and sobbing uncontrollably. When the rest of the squad arrived, Shoyuta simply gestured to the unconscious man on the floor and asked for an ambulance to check on the kid. Shoyuta can see the kid has at least a third-degree burn on his right hand, but he might have other wounds. Chapter 7. Chapter Text. When Zuko woke up, the first thing he felt was the pain in his right hand. He looked down and saw it wrapped in bandages. Right? He used his purple flames against Hisashi. No matter how resistant he is against fire, flames that hot are bound to hurt him. He wondered how bad it looked. He tried moving his left hand to brush the bandages, but felt a tug on his wrist. When he looked down, he was cuffed to the bed. We've been cuffed since we got transferred to this room. He heard Kuzu. Shoyuta almost punched the policeman when he heard it. This brought a smile to Zuko's face. I guess this is better than waking up on Tartarus. Right, Zuko said, shrugging. Where is Aizawa-san? He left a few minutes ago, saying something like. Kuzu cleared his throat and took a deeper voice. This is completely illogical. This is a kid, not a criminal. Someone will lose their job. Zuko giggled. He was about to reply when he heard someone approaching. Let me deal with them. Zuko nodded and closed his eyes, passing control of the body to Kuzu. When he opened his eyes again, both were yellow. The door opened a few seconds later, and a furious duo of Tsukachi and Eraserhead entered, followed by another policeman. What are you waiting for? Shoyuta asked. Uncuff the kid. The policeman turned to Tsukachi with an uncertain expression, but the detective just gave him a glare. Are you deaf? Uncuff the kid and leave. Tsukachi said angrily. The policeman nodded and immediately went to uncuff Izuku. Then he took the cuffs and left the room, ensuring to avoid both Tsukachi and Shuta's glares. Kuzu saw a small bruise on his wrist and tried to massage it with his right hand, but his fingers were immobilized by the bands. He frowned for a second and gave up on trying. When he dropped his arm back, he felt a hand gently rubbing his wrist, and when he looked, he saw Shoyuta sitting next to his bed, looking at him with a worried expression. Everyone stayed in silence for a few minutes, nobody really knowing what to say. Shoyuta was absolutely furious. First, it took 5 hours just for him to be able to go visit Izuku in his room. He made sure to go check with the doctor first. The doctor went through all the injuries Izuku had, which surprisingly weren't many. The worst part was the third-degree burning on the kid's right hand, and even it was caused by his own quirk and not by Hisashi. Other than that, he only had some minor burns. Izuku seems to have immense fire resistance. After that, Shoyuta went to check the kid in the room the doctor indicated, and what he found made his blood boil. The policeman in front of the room acting as if he were guarding a prison cell would be bad enough. But then, when Shoyuta enters the room, what does he find? Izuku glaring at his left arm as if it had offended him. Getting closer, what made the kid so upset became obvious. Izuku was cuffed to the bed with quirk-suppressant handcuffs. Shoyuta audibly gasped at this, and it was enough to get the kid's attention. The kid's yellow eye said everything Shoyuta needed to know. When Shoyuta questioned the guard outside, he had the nerve to say it was just a precaution, to make sure that the vigilante would not run away again. With that, Shoyuta talked quickly with Izuku and then left the room, practically spewing steam out of his ears from how angry he was. Then he picked up the phone and made 2 calls. The first and simplest was to call Tsukachi. After explaining what had happened, the detective was as furious as Shoyuta and said he would be at the hospital in 20 minutes. The second call was to Nedzu, because unfortunately, if he wants to solve this problem, he will need to sell his soul to Satan, specifically the rat Satan. After Tsukachi's arrival and having managed to get Izuku uncuffed, they stayed in the room in silence for a few minutes. Shoyuta gently massaged Izuku's bruised wrist. No one knew how to start the conversation. Shoyuta heard a sigh, and the kid started talking. I know you have questions. It is useless to stall any further. Ifrit started. All right, Tsukachi replied, pulling a recorder. As you probably know, I am legally obliged to record this talk. But if you start feeling uncomfortable at any moment, we can have a break. And if needed, we can continue this another day. Okay, Ifrit replied, taking a deep breath. Let's get this over. With this, Tsukachi started recording. This is Police Detective Tsukachi Naomasa of the Mizutofu Police Station. Today's date is July 16th, 2XXX. The current time is 8:21. I am here with Midoriya Izuku-kun and his current emergency foster guardian, Aizawa Shura-san, in Mizutofu General Hospital. Then Tsukachi gave a nod to Izuku and Shoyuta. Introduce yourselves. Aizawa Shoyuta. Pro Hero Eraserhead. Shoyuta said curtly. Izuku took a deep breath, closing his eyes, then opened again, showing a blue and a yellow eye. We are Midoriya Izuku. But to make it easier, I am Kuzu. Kuzu. Finally Shoyuta had a name to call him, aka Vigilante Ifrit. And you can call me Zuku. Vigilante Poltergeist. Zuku said right after. The two vigilantes are the same person? Tsukachi asked, surprised. Their statement is true. We are, but we also aren't. Kuzu replied. I am Ifrit, and Zuku is Poltergeist. I can't use Zuku's telekinesis, and Zuku can't use my fire. We are different persons as much as we are both Midoriya Izuku. Truth. Tsukachi said to the recorder. Do you know how this happened? Well, we have a few theories, but let's start from the beginning. Kuzu replied, and Shoyuta braced himself for the story. Do you know about the statistics for quirkless kids? With that, Kuzu started explaining their story, from before when Izuku still had only one personality. How he remembers his life before his 4th birthday. How he was diagnosed, like some kind of sickness, as quirkless, his father abandoned them. The bullying started at the school. And then, a year later, he found his mother's body. After that, he started describing his life with Hisashi. He took off his hospital gown and started pointing each scar on his body and explaining with a disturbing number of details how he got each one. After the scars, he told them about the day Hisashi forgot a folded paper cover that had a list of all the victims of the eye burner and how that ended with Izuku finding Hisashi's trophy room. And then how Izuku became desperate and fled the house without taking anything. Why didn't you try to look for the police or a hero? Tsukachi asked, and Kuzu started laughing at the question. Police? Heroes? Are you serious? Kuzu asked like he had just heard the most ridiculous thing in his life. The teachers at my school did not believe that I was bullied even though I had a giant blast scar on my shoulder. Do you really think that if I went to the police station and told them that my father was a serial killer, they would have listened to me? You might, but they would never let me talk to you. What would happen is that they would send me back to Hisashi, or else I would end up in foster care. And frankly, between foster care and going back to Hisashi, at least being homeless, I had some chance of surviving. Now, Tsukachi looked completely horrified. Obviously, everything the kid just said rang truth for him. And as much as it pains Shoyuta, he also knows that it's true. If Izuku had come to the police, they would have been ignored the moment the word quirkless was said. And worst, they would probably have called his father, and if that had happened, Shoyuta doesn't want to even think about it. Anyway, Kuzu continued. As you know, there was a fire, and they found my body inside. It happened months after I ran away. But I am obviously here and alive, right? Well, I have a good guess on what happened. After running away, Hisashi tried looking for me, but never found me. If it was found that I was missing for months and never reported, he would have been investigated. Well, he must have got a kid with a similar body structure to mine. And Kuzu didn't finish this sentence, but Shoyuta could see him gritting his teeth. And well, around the same time, another child disappeared. He was reported dead months later, but neither the body nor the person responsible was ever found. I saw his picture in the newspaper. The resemblance was uncanny. After that disturbing revelation, everyone in the room needed a break to process the new information. Hisashi's list of crimes is only getting longer by the second. Honestly, even if you only count the eye burner murders, Hisashi would probably end up with life imprisonment. And now we add abuse and arson to the formula. The break ended a bit earlier than Shoyuta would have liked, but Izuku said he wanted to end this as soon as possible. Shoyuta could only think that he was trying to spare Zuku from the memories. Zuka hadn't said a single word since his introduction. Surprisingly, the next part was much less disturbing than the rest of the story. The year this child spent living on the streets was safer for him than the last two when he had a home and family. This is disturbing in a completely different aspect. After explaining the event that led Izuku to develop both his quirk and his dual personality, Kuzu delved into his theory of how the two work. What I am going to talk about now are just theories. After all, I am not some kind of mental expert. But it is the only explanation that makes sense, Kuzu said, and with Shoyuta and Tsukachi's nod he started. For starters, although Zuku has retained most of our original personality, it's not like he's the original Izuku. Just like me, he has some things missing. He emphasized the quotation marks on the missing. It is quite simple to tell the truth. I am a different side of Izuku Midoriya's personality. I was born out of his anger. And since I'm basically his anger, Zuku cannot feel anger, hatred, or other similar emotions, Kuzu said, then held a hand before Shoyuta could make a question. Yes, I know that we both decided to go after Hisashi, and that we certainly both resent him for what he did. But it was I who wanted revenge. Zuka never hated him, because he can't. Frankly, Shoyuta didn't know what he could say. Now that he thinks about it, he noticed Zuku crying many times in the 2 years he's been interacting with the kid, but Kuzu never showed any sign of tears. But what the kid is implying is, thankfully most emotions are still shared. We can both feel happiness, for example. But Zuka doesn't feel anger, and I don't cry. Kuzu continued his explanation. He was talking lower and faster by the second. The kid will probably start muttering any second now. I know I have most of the negative emotions, while Zuku has most of the positive ones. What do you mean by negative emotions? Tsukachi asked. Zuku and I are quite opposites when you think about it. I am short-sighted, Zuku is patient. I am resentful, and Zuku is forgiving. I am distrustful, and Zuku is trustful. I am petty and angry, and Zuku is all sunshine and smiles. Kuzu replied simply. I'm not saying that these emotions are bad. They are both part of us. Denying them would be denying who I am. Then, before he could get too philosophical, he shook his head and looked unsurely at Tsukachi. Anyway, this is my story. With the statement concluded, Tsukachi turned off the recorder, but for the next few minutes, no one dared to say any word. This was honestly much more than Shoyuta expected. After this story, Shoyuta is honestly thankful the kid ended up as a vigilante, because if he had turned on a villain, Shoyuta wouldn't be surprised. Is this the part where you send us to Tartarus? To everyone's surprise, the one to break the silence was Poltergeist, Zuku. What? Shoyuta asked, horrified at the kid thinking he would be sent to Tartarus. Just the prospect is terrifying. It makes sense, doesn't it? The kid continued. I am a wanted vigilante, and now you have proof of who I am. I am the son of a supervillain and serial killer. I almost killed Hisashi, no matter how much he deserved it. And I just confessed 3 years of illegal public quirk usage in front of the lie detector detective, so he knows it's all true. Where else could you send me? Kid. Izuku. Look at me. Shoyuta said, and the kid looked at him. For the first time, Shoyuta saw the same expression in both the kids' personalities. It was fear. No one is sending you to Tartarus, okay? You're not a villain, and you'll never be. Then, what will happen to us now? Zuku asked again. Truth be told, what the kid said makes sense. No matter what they do, this kid has been breaking laws for 3 straight years. Shoyuta is more than prepared to start a war against the Hero Commission if they try to send Izuku to Tartarus. But frankly, unless a solution suddenly falls from the sky, Shoyuta is at a loss. I might have the answer for that question. Well, the solution doesn't fall from the sky. Instead, it falls from an air vent right above them. And it's rat-shaped. Am I a mouse? A dog? A bear? Who knows? I'm the principal of Ue Nedzu. The rat Satan introduced, raising his right paw. And well, when Nedzu said he would be there soon, Shoyuta didn't expect to be so soon. Though he shouldn't be surprised, when it comes to the rat, nothing is unexpected. When Shoyuta looked back to Izuku, his eyes were practically sparkling at the sight of the chimera, but he didn't say anything. A few seconds later, Shoyuta forced a cough to get their attention back. Nedzu, I wasn't expecting you that soon, Shoyuta said. Of course, it's not every day you ask me a favor, the rat replied, and I've been dying to meet Mustafu's mysterious vigilante duo for a long time already. Then he turned to Izuku. It's nice to meet you. Nedzu. The kid whispered half in awe and half in fear. He opened his mouth to say something else, then his left hand covered it, muffling it. We'll have time for fanboying later, Zuku. Kuzu said after uncovering his mouth. Then he nodded to Nezu again. You said you have the answer to our question? What will happen to us now? Of course. It's pretty simple, to be honest. I have a new project that I've been wanting to put into practice for some time now. The rat said, taking two identical folders from somewhere and giving one to Shoyuta and the other to Izuku. Also Shudakuen. The last pages have something I'm sure you'll like. Shoyuta looked at the folder titled Project Vigilante for a few seconds and then started to quickly go through the pages. For now, he just wants to know what it's about. He'll have time for details later. The project is somewhat simple. A vigilante rehabilitation project where, if approved, the vigilante will undergo training at the UA under the supervision of a mentor, that mentor being one of the professors at the UA. At the end of the project, if he is deemed fit, he will receive a special hero's license and will be able to participate in the tests to receive an official one afterwards. The details of the studies and training are all listed on the sheets. But looking quickly, show you to notice that it is basically the UA's hero course. And coming to the last pages, Shoyuta had a more than pleasant surprise. The last papers were not about the project, but official documents just waiting to be signed. Adoption documents. Shoyuta looked at Izuku, who was reading the papers with an expression of disbelief, but he easily noticed the tears threatening to fall from his blue eyes. After everything, Izuku whispered. Then he looked at Shoyuta with hopeful eyes. Can someone like me be a hero? Shoyuta looked him in the eye with all possible seriousness and said firmly, You are already a hero, Izuku, and one of the best I've ever met. And the magic happened. The floodgates opened and the tears began to fall. Shoyuta gently hugged him, while Izuku sobbed dozens of thank yous into the hero's arms. After a few minutes, Izuku finally calmed down, and Shoyuta decided to drop the other bomb. He handed the adoption papers to Izuku and once again asked the question. Izuku. The kid looked up after a few seconds of staring at the papers in disbelief. Will you let me adopt you? And the second wave of tears and hugs began, this time only from one eye since Kuzu decided to join in the embrace. They both eagerly nodded at the proposal. And after all, they've been through well. This is the only time Shoyuta will admit that he smiled. Shut up. Shoyuta is not going soft. Only for his kid. Chapter 8. 3 years later. Usually, Shoyuta does not listen to Hisashi's radio program. He already has to deal with the blonde enough at work. But today is an exception. The reason is simple enough. Izuku is giving his first interview today. Present Mike has already called dibs on his first interview 3 years ago when Izuku was just starting his training. And now 2 weeks after the official debut of Pro Hero Duality, the time has finally come. Pro Hero. Shoyuta has felt pride before, even though he never admits it out loud. He is always proud of his students who succeed in graduating. But Izuku, his child, is a different case. The pride he feels in him is such that let's just say that Shoyuta has a copy of his hero's license framed and hanging on his bedroom wall, and also a copy of the article about his debut right next to it. Shut up, he's not soft. That's not the point. The point is that Izuku's first interview will start any moment now, and if Shoyuta is all set to record it, no one needs to know. Suddenly a song starts playing on the radio, indicating the beginning of the program, and a few seconds later Hisashi's clear voice begins to speak. Zuku is nervous. He's about to give an interview at Uncle Mick's program, and he's almost panicking. They have already rehearsed what they are going to say, just a few simple questions, kind of a way to introduce Izuku to the world. It doesn't mean that Zuku is any less nervous because of it. And Kuzu, the traitor, is simply in the back of their minds, laughing at Zuku's torment. All right, Zuku, deep breaths, you can do it. It's just Uncle Mike. You will end up giving interviews to strangers. Better start practicing now. Truth be told, Zuku would love to be an underground hero like his father, but unfortunately for Project Vigilante to be approved, it was clearly stated by the Hero Commission that the participants needed to become limelight heroes. The best they could do in this situation was for Izuku to become a kind of hybrid hero. He will have a media presence, give interviews, and have his own merchandise like any other hero. But most of his personal information, as well as details about his quirk, will be kept secret by the commission. The fact that his deeds are public means that his secrets will not last long. But at least Kuzu likes the attention, so a silver line. Anyway, the starting song is about to finish. It's showtime. Showtime. He heard Kuzu speaking from the deep of his mind. Hey, listeners. This is your host, Present Mike. Welcome to our show. Put your hands up. Well, Uncle Mike is as animated as ever. This at least gets Zuku to calm down a little. And today, we have a special guest. Or should I say two? Why suspense? It's not like you haven't been announcing this interview all week, Uncle Mike. Kuzu said, and had to hold back his laughter when Mike looked at him pouting. Well, I still need to do some suspense, little listener. This is how the show works. Uncle Mike replied, then smiled again. Anyway, why don't you greet our audience? Hello, everyone. Zuku was the first one to say. I'm the duality hero, Poltergeist. Hey, listeners. Kuzu greeted, doing a Present Mike impression. This is your beloved duality hero, Ifrit. It's nice to be here, they said in unison. Sometimes it's funny how they can do two voices at the same time. That's right, listeners. Here we have pro hero, duality, about to do their first ever interview. These young pro heroes debuted less than a month ago and already gathered quite a good fan base. Between their quick thinking, skillful quirk usage, and a great balance and dynamic between the two of them, they already make civilians feel safety and admiration, and villains feel fear. Good thing the interview is by radio because the right half of Izuku's face is already completely red from hearing the praises. Can we please go straight to the questions? Zuku whispered in embarrassment, but the studio microphone is so good that it surely picked up. All right, Present Mike thankfully had mercy on his soul and picked a paper sheet where they had most of the questions written. We asked the listeners to send us the questions they would like answered. They sent in a lot, and our team selected the best ones. First question. Uncle Mike took a few seconds of suspense before continuing. You look younger than my grandson. How old are you, dear? He read the question exactly as it was sent, including doing his best impression of an old lady. Zuku had to cover his mouth tightly to prevent Kuzu's laughter from escaping. After they calmed down, Zuku decided to answer first. We are both 13 at the moment. And yes, I know. Aren't you too young to be pro-heroes? Kuzu made a mocking question. Yes, we are. But we wouldn't have been chosen as part of Project Vigilante if they didn't trust our abilities. Zuku explained. They had already decided in advance that they would open the game. After all, Project Vigilante was never a secret. On the contrary, with Izuku being the first participant and proving the success of the project, publicizing it so that it would reach other vigilantes would be the best thing to do. And if you think we are young now, imagine when you find out how old we started. 13 years old, and they already have 6 years of experience between vigilantism, training, and now professionally. That's almost half their lives, and they are just getting started. That's right. I may not have been your mentor during the project, but all of us in the UA have seen how skilled you are. Uncle Mike said before looking down at the paper again. Next question. When are you going to start releasing hero merch? Uncle Mike looked at Izuku and grinned. So, damn, people want our hero merch. Zuku said, scratching the back of his head. Of course they want. Kuzu replied before Mike could. Dad said already they would. Then he turned to Mike smiling. That depends, my dear listeners. But I'd like to say soon. God knows that this bonehead could use a little boost of confidence. Then he made a small next sign while patting his own head. Anyone who doesn't know them would find it a weird scene. But Mike is more than used to seeing Kuzu comforting Zuku. To him the scene is just plain cute. All right, now let me see. He looked one more time at his papers and smiled. Got a good one here. Why do you two act under the same hero name? Also, will you reveal your true name? 2 questions in one. We got a greedy one here. Kuzu joked. Answering the latter first. No, Zuku said simply. We want to keep our civilian and hero lives separate. Just like Uncle Mike. No one knows who he really is. We know though, Kuzu said. Nephew privileges. Zuka cheered. And no, we aren't blood related. But Uncle Mike is completely our cool uncle. Then Zuku covered his ears as Uncle Mike let out a quirk-powered scream that caused a malfunction on his microphone. It looks like we are having a few technical problems here. So we'll be back right after a small break. Kuzu said, smirking. Stay tuned, listeners. We'll be right back. Okay, Kuzu makes a damn good Mike impression. Shoyuta was never so grateful for being alone as he is right now. It's a good thing this interview happened on his day off. Because if people saw the smile he had on his face right now, his image would be forever destroyed. I mean, everyone kinda knows how soft. Shut up. He's not soft. You can't prove anything. Anyway, each question he heard Izuku answering made him feel prouder. As much as he always knew Kuzu would be able to handle it just fine, he was a little worried for Zuko. The kid is so shy that it's hard for him to talk to anyone his own age. His only friend, at the moment, is Kuzu, which is slightly worrying, but Shoyuta trusts his son. Still, Shoyuta is more than sure that his kid will have all the media wrapped on his finger in less than a month. It's impossible to resist his kid's charm. Just like the entire police department wasn't able to. The public certainly won't. If he didn't wear a mask, a single smile caught on camera would be enough. But Izuku wanted to keep his true identity a secret, mostly because he didn't want people to make the connection between him and Shoyuta, since revealing Shuta's identity could be compromising to the underground hero. Shoyuta, of course, was more worried about his kid's safety than his own, so he completely agreed with keeping it a secret. They don't hide that they are father and son, but no one needs to know they are both heroes. Oh, the music is back. Looks like the break is over. Back to the interview. All right, listeners. Sorry for the delay, Uncle Mike said after his microphone was changed. But now, let's continue. The show must go on. All right, where were we? Zuko asked. You answered the second half of this question. Let's recap. Uncle Mike said, then read the question again. Why do you two act under the same hero name? Also, will you reveal your true name? Well, as we said, we won't be revealing our true name anytime soon. Zuko recapitulated his earlier answer. As for the first question, well, it's kinda simple. Kuzu continued. But we won't answer that today, he said laughing. Now, before you start booing me, there's a good reason for the secret. It wasn't even supposed to be a secret, Zuko protested. I thought it was obvious. It would be if our information weren't classified, Kuzu replied. But yeah, it's not a secret, but since no one knows, Kuzu took up a paper from somewhere and started looking through it. It's so much funnier to read your theories. This one we will eventually tell the public, Zuka said, but I don't have the heart to stop Ifrit when he loves reading your theories that much. Oh, come on, Poltergeist. They are incredible. The ones about our identities are amazing. Like, look at this one, Kuzu said, looking at the paper. Endeavor's secret love child. He barely finished his reading before bursting into laughter. Like, the writer had a few good arguments, but mostly it was, they both have powerful fire quirks, so they must be related. Kuzu kept trying to control his laughter. Can you believe that? With all due disrespect, if I were Endeavor's son, I would go crazy. Okay. You made your point, Ifrit, Zuka said, calming Kuzu down. But I have to agree. Endeavor sucks. Anyway, there's some really good theories over there. Some more accurate than others. Kuzu continued. There are some people who have come very close to getting it right. And if someone does get it right, I commit myself to come back here and read that person's theory live. People will hold you on that promise, Ifrit. Zuka deadpanned. Well, listeners, our time is almost up, but we have time for one more question, so let's get to it. Then Uncle Mike looked at his papers one more time and looked up to Izuku smiling. What could you say to the quirkless or people over with weak or villainous quirks? Villainous, Zuko asked, tilting his head to the side. That's the biggest bull beep asterisk that I've ever heard before. What would a villainous quirk be? A quirk is only a tool. How you use it is what says if you are a hero or villain. Look at me, Kuzu said right after. People say fire is a heroic quirk, but they forget that I could burn down the entire city if I wanted. As for weak or quirkless, believe me, I know what you passed. Zuko continued. I was a late bloomer, and I have the extra toe joint, which is another load of bull beep asterisk should I add, so everyone thought I was quirkless. I might have a quirk now, but I felt firsthand what quirkless kids feel. So let me say one thing. You're not less or more than anyone else because of your quirk. It might seem like the world is against you now, but remember there are good people too. These are the ones you should focus on. And if you ever need help, remember these numbers. Then Zuko passed 3 different phone numbers. They were 3 NGOs focused on helping people who suffers with quirk discrimination. I wish I knew about them before. And remember, Quirkists everywhere. Discrimination is a crime. And you can run away all you want, but one day you will have to face the consequences. Kuzu added. Well, looks like this is it. Uncle Mike said after closing the question. Thank you for coming, little listener. I hope we can do it again. Of course, Uncle Mike. You'll always have priority over my schedule, Kuzu said, grinning. That's right, Zuka said right after. I will admit, I was nervous, but this was much more fun than I thought it would be. Before we close, anything else to add? Mike asked again. For all the dreamers out there, Zuka said, never let anyone tell you that you can't do it. It doesn't matter if your dream is to be a hero, a doctor, a teacher, a janitor, or a pizza parlor night watchman. You can do it. Pizza parlor night watchman? That was oddly specific. Kuzu teased, but I couldn't have said it better myself. You can do it. You heard them, listeners. Uncle Mike said, then activated his quirk. You can do it. Thankfully, the new microphone was prepared for the sudden raise of volume, so this one didn't break. See you all on our next program. Same time, same frequency. With that, Uncle Mike started playing another music indicating the end of the program. The cherry on top of his day was when he got home later that day and found his dadzawa cooking katsudan for dinner. Chapter 9. Chapter text. 1 year later. It was their day off. No patrols, no villains, just them, their father, their cats, curled up in front of the TV, watching whatever was playing. Lazy days like that always were their favorites. But then, how did he end up having to spend the afternoon running after a damn villain made of sludge? The short answer, All Might is a moron. Oh, you want the long explanation? Okay, sit down. Here comes the story. As already said, it was Izuku and his dad's day off. They spent most of their day curled on their sofa with their cats Bastard and Pablo. I doubt you can guess who named him. Since they didn't have to patrol that night, Dadzawa had just expelled his whole class again. But it was starting to get late, so Dad went to start dinner and asked Izuku to go to the mall to get some things they were missing at home. Izuku promptly accepted and went. So far so good. But then, he had to take a shortcut through a tunnel. That's when everything started to go wrong, starting when he heard a voice saying, "A medium-sized vessel." The voice immediately caught Izuku's attention, and when he turned around, he saw some kind of slime thing crawling towards him. "You'll make the perfect skin suit for me to hide in, kid." Well, great. Just on his day off, too. Izuku, unfazed by the villain, he has seen worse, sidestepped when the sludge tried to catch him. "Leave this one to me," Zuku said, raising his arm and making a grabbing motion. The villain stopped moving and their exposed eyes widened. "You know, there are a few things that I really hate," Kuzu started saying, while Zuku compressed the villain. "Being bothered on my day off is definitely one of them." Saying that, Kuzu opened his mouth and shot a fire burst on the villain, who screamed in pain. Even if he is immune to physical damage, fire is hot. "I said leave to me, Kuzu," Zuka said, pouting. Then he took a bottle from his grocery bag and emptied it. "Damn, what a waste. Now, be a good villain and enter the bottle," he said, shoving the villain inside the bottle. "Great. Now we'll need to go to the police station," Kuzu sighed. "Hopefully, Suka-san will be there. We don't have our suit," Zuku replied. "At least we brought the license," Kuzu said. "Imagine the Hiata dash." "Have no fear, you are safe," a voice said from the other side of the tunnel. "Now that I am." Then he stopped when he saw just a kid there. "I'm sure I heard a screaming from there." "Probably from this guy," Kuzu said, showing the bottle. "This, whatever he is, tried to attack me, said something about using me as a skin suit." "I see. I've been searching for this villain for some time already. Thank you for the help, kid," All Might replied, taking the bottle and putting it in his pocket. "It seems like it will fall any second now. I'll bring him to the police station." Saying that, All Might turned around and prepared to jump, which no doubt will end up with him dropping the bottle. "Wait, All Might," Zuka tried to call him. "Sorry, kid. I can't give you an autograph right now. I have to go," he said, then jumped up. Izuku could see the exact moment that the bottle fell down from his pocket, and the giant bouffon continued without noticing it. "Great. Just great," Kuzu said angrily. "What an imbecile. I can't believe he used to be our favorite hero," Zuku said facepalming. Then he took his phone and dialed his dad's number. problem, child? Their dad answered rather quickly. Did something happen? Hi, Dad. We are fine, but we'll be a little late. Zuko replied. What happened? Dadzawa asked, and Zuko sighed. Well, some kind of swamp villain attacked us. Zuko explained. We are fine. He didn't lay a finger on us, and we trapped him in a bottle. Then All Moron showed up and took the villain, saying he would bring him to the police. Kuzu continued. The imbecile jumped out, dropped the bottle, and probably still didn't notice it. So now we need to find the villain. This is why I hate that buffoon. Their dad replied. Be careful. Don't worry. We'll call you if we need backup. Probably it won't be necessary, but it's always good to be prepared. All right, kid. See you soon. Dadzawa said, then hung up. One problem solved. Now where is the villain? If I were a giant mud ball trying to hide, where would I go? Kuzu asked. He said he wanted to use us as a skin suit. He probably will try to find another kid. Zuka said, where would we find many kids? They thought for a few seconds, then it clicked. Aldera, they said in unison. All right, let's run, Kuzu said. It's better if we fly, Zuko replied. They don't have their hero's suit, but thankfully, they always carry their mask with them. That, combined with the hoodie they are wearing, will, hopefully, be enough to hide their identity if they have to engage. So they fly at max speed in the direction of Aldera Junior High. But on the way, they hear the sound of an explosion. An extremely familiar explosion, despite being about 9 years since he last heard it. Fuck. Why is this happening to him? Katsuki is about to die suffocated by a fucking pile of sludge. Where the hell did this damn villain come from? What's all this about a skin suit? And why aren't any heroes doing anything to help him? He saw at least 3 heroes coming before the villain blocked his vision as well. Why doesn't anyone do anything? Why don't his explosions affect this damn villain? Katsuki has never faced someone he couldn't defeat with his explosions. What is this feeling of helplessness? He hates that feeling. Was this how Deku felt all the time? Fuck, why is he thinking about the nerd at a time like this? It's been almost 10 years since he disappeared. At least 7 since the Bakugas saw about his death on the news. The nerd died in a fire. Was it the flames, or did he suffocate from the smoke? Strange to think that he is about to die of suffocation too. Fuck, Katsuki can't die like this. He still needs to become a hero. He has to surpass All Might and become the #1 hero. He already broke his promise with Izuku once. The two of them can no longer become heroes together, and it's all his fault. When Katsuki heard about Izuku's death, he promised that he would become a hero for him too. He can't break this promise too. But it's getting harder and harder to hold on. How long has this pile of mud been suffocating Katsuki? It can't be more than a few seconds, minutes at most, but he feels like hours have passed. His explosions are weakening. The outside sound is getting lower. Fuck no. If he loses consciousness now, he will be dead, without a doubt. Suddenly, he feels as if something is holding him by the shoulders, and then he is being pulled from inside the villain. As suddenly as it started, he feels air again and starts coughing, desperately trying to pull in as much air as possible while trying to expel the sludge that has no doubt entered his lungs. For the next few minutes, Katsuki is not quite sure what happened. He briefly remembers seeing a skull mask, blue eyes, and a mop of dark green hair. Very familiar hair, but it can't be. He is dead. Still, unconsciously, Katsuki raises an arm toward the figure. Izuku. The last thing Katsuki sees before passing out is the mysterious figure turning around and looking at him wide-eyed. To say that Izuku is furious would be an understatement. The moment he heard the explosions, extremely familiar explosions, he flew at full speed to see what it was all about. Imagine his surprise when he saw the scene in front of him. There were so many things going wrong there. First, the slime villain holding a child hostage, trying to invade his body by entering through his mouth and nose. And the child? Katsuki Bakugu, Kaken. It has been almost 10 years since Izuku has seen him. If only it were under better circumstances. Second, 3 heroes watching the scene doing nothing, because, and I quote, "We don't have the right quirk to deal with this villain." How can they call themselves heroes and stand by and watch a child die? And no sign of All Might. It's not possible that he's such an idiot that he hasn't noticed that the villain has escaped yet, right? Whatever the reason, the symbol of peace has not yet arrived. Well, If these heroes won't do their job, then Izuku will have to do it for them. Without bothering to ask them to make way, Zuko immediately jumps in front of them, putting on his mask on the way, and extends both arms, focusing on Katsuki, who is struggling less and less. The moment he locates the blonde, he makes a pulling motion with his full force, yanking Katsuki out of the villain's grasp and holding him in his arms. Then Zuko holds the villain and compresses him, the same way he did earlier, and puts him into another bottle. Second bottle wasted. The villain only has the moment to widen his eyes in surprise. He can't even speak a word. Looking around, Zuko sees a burning building, probably the result of Katsuki's explosions. Backdraft, another hero present, had been trying to put out the fire since Izuku arrived. Strange priorities, since Katsuki was still letting off explosions uncontrollably the whole time. Anything the hero put out soon burned again because of that. But at least he was trying to do something. The same couldn't be said for Kimui Woods, Mountain Lady, and Death Arms. Sighing, Zuko raised his arms again and started gathering the fire on the buildings, compressing them into a small fireball and holding it in his right hand. Then he quickly swallowed it like a pill and went to check on Katsuki. The kid was coughing and desperately trying to gather any air possible. Putting his hand gently on his chest, Zuko tries to feel inside his lungs, and there's no doubt he is sludge there. Looking around, the others were still just watching, so Zuko sighs again and passes control to Kuzu. He is better at this. At least he can show anger. Do I really need to do everything here? Can someone call a goddamn ambulance before this child dies? Kuzu said angrily, practically growling at the other heroes. It does the work. The heroes start moving around to call the rescue. He has sludge in the lungs, so tell them to hurry up. And of course, the press, which simply does not know the meaning of bad timing, chooses just now to try to interview Izuku. Poltergeist, can you make a statement? A journalist shoves a microphone in his face. Kuzu simply pushes the microphone back, glaring at the cameras. I can't. I'm too busy doing their work, he says, pointing at the other heroes, who at least have the decency to look embarrassed. Then, making sure that the ambulance is on its way, Izuku goes to the heroes, making sure to send them a glare that would make his father proud, and starts lecturing them. The scene is honestly comical. For adults, staring at the ground while a child scolds them, and they look terrified. What saves them from an hour-long lecture is the voice Izuku hears coming from behind him. Izuku. Izuku was the only one who heard, being used to picking up low voices even in the middle of crowds. He turns around, looking at Katsuki on the ground with wide eyes. There's no way Katsuki recognized him, right? But he has his arm extended towards Izuku. Is that a coincidence? Then the arm goes limp and Katsuki closes his eyes. Izuku's confusion immediately turns to concern, and he practically throws himself on his knees in front of his former childhood friend. No, 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 no. Come on, don't pass out now. The rescue is almost here. You're going to be okay. Izuku tries to say, but has no answer. He presses his ear to Katsuki's chest, and at least his heart is still beating. He also hears a wheezing sound coming from his lungs. Where's the damn ambulance? Almost like an invocation, he hears the sirens approaching, and unlike the heroes, at least the doctors are fast and efficient. In a matter of a few minutes, Katsuki is in the ambulance and being taken straight to the hospital where he can be treated. After all this, Izuku goes home, mentally exhausted after this roller coaster of emotions. And to think that all this happened because the imbecile named All Might is incapable of guarding a bottle properly. Frankly, Izuku even forgot why he had come out in the first place. In the midst of the chaos, he ended up losing all the groceries he had bought. What a waste. His father listened attentively and patiently while Izuku explained in detail everything that had happened. And in the end, they decided to order a pizza because frankly it was already too late to cook and they would have to go to the grocery store again for that. One thing Izuku knows now, Katsuki is fine and stronger than ever. He will probably go to UA. After all, being a hero has always been his dream. The biggest problem is that he will find out that Izuku is alive. Izuku is already dreading the conversation they will have. The blonde will certainly be angry. Izuku only hopes that he has matured at least a little in these 9 years, because he doesn't want a new scar for his collection. But Izuku is no longer the quirkless Deku. He is a pro hero now. In an all-out fight, he is even able to match his father. Not to mention that the staff of UA will not stand idly by if something happens. Director Nedzu's anti-bullying policy is unforgiving. If Katsuki tries anything, he won't get away with it. The exams are 9 months away. Izuku wonders what kind of class will come this time. He just hopes his father doesn't expel everyone again. Although this time Nedzu has contingencies in place to prevent this. Chapter 10. Chapter Text. On the day of the exam, Izuku arrived early with his father. They went soon to the staff room, so everyone could be prepared to do their jobs. What? You thought Izuku would be taking the exam? No, they won't. Izuku has technically already graduated. So from this year on, they will act as teaching assistant in Eraserhead's homeroom. Technically, they were supposed to start last year, but a certain someone expelled his whole class, so there were no classes for Izuku to assist. As for the exam, Izuku has 2 functions. The first, like the other teachers, is to keep an eye on the participants to distribute rescue points during the practical part. The second is to look out for promising students who don't have the right quirks for the test, thus making this biased test a little fairer. Unfortunately, they can only choose one person to pass this way, so they have to make sure they make the right choice. Especially since the chosen one will be taking someone else's spot. The responsibility is great, but everyone agrees that Izuku can handle it, and they wouldn't have agreed if they didn't think they could too. The participants look relatively promising this year. Some of them already draw attention, good or bad. Mostly good, though. The amazing part is how many quirks Izuku can see and analyze in a single day. Obviously, the ones with mutations draw the most attention, like the boy with the crow's head, or the one with engines on his legs, clearly a relative of Ingenium. But the floating uniform, invisibility, draws just as much attention. On the other hand, there is also a short boy, somehow smaller even than Izuku himself, with hair that looks like a grape bunch. This one drew attention for all the wrong reasons. He doesn't seem to be taking the tests even a little bit seriously. And all the time, Izuku could see him trying to make conversation with the girls. And they all seem to get extremely uncomfortable as soon as he starts talking. This one is a great candidate to be removed in Aizawa's purge if he gets in. But who knows? And of course, another one that draws attention is the boy with purple hair that defies the laws of gravity, combined with dark circles under his eyes that could give Eraserheads a run for his money. If Izuku didn't know better, he would think this kid is his dad's secret love child. Having most of the students' files in hand, Izuku quickly looks for the ones they need to keep an eye on, and what a nice surprise. The purple-haired one has a mental quirk. Izuku will watch this one closely. On the written test, there is not much to comment on. Izuku takes this test every year for fun, and frankly, it's too easy. If it were up to Nedzu, the test would be much longer and more difficult. But it seems that some students would not agree with him, especially those who are literally shedding tears on the paper. Well, this is UA. If they are despairing just because of that, they aren't suited for this school. After the written test, Izuku makes a point of appearing in the auditorium where Uncle Mike is explaining how the practical test will be. They stand at the room entrance watching and have to hold back from answering when everyone ignores Uncle's asking for a cheer, mainly because they didn't want to call attention to themselves. He doesn't want a certain Katsuki noticing him there at the moment. Apparently, they were not discreet enough. Is this the famous UA entrance exam? This is too easy. It's like the test was made for Katsuki. The written test was child's play. Will the practical test be that easy too? Probably. Katsuki is the best, after all. He quickly locates his assigned chair in the auditorium and sits down, waiting for whoever will explain how the test will work. UA exams are always a secret. Everyone who takes the test must sign a non-disclosure contract, so no one knows how it works. It doesn't take long for a pro hero to appear and explain the test. Or not, because it's present Mike, and he obviously will act as a radio host even there. Everybody say HEY. No one replied. Geez, tough crowd. From there, present Mike began to explain how the exam would work. Something that can be summed up as smash as many robots as you can before time runs out. The robots have different values, but this is not important to Katsuki. It's not like he's going to be searching. Any robot that appears in front of him can already be considered junk. But it seems that some don't agree with him, as a four-eyed blue-haired extra decided to interrupt the explanation to accuse the AU of making a mistake. This error would be explained in less than 30 seconds if the idiot would just let the hero finish the explanation. Katsuki turned to him with every intention of telling him to go to hell. But he ended up saying nothing, because in his peripheral vision, he saw someone else. Specifically, someone who wears a black cloak covering his entire body and a skull mask concealing his face. Poltergeist. Katsuki will never forget him. It was he who saved Katsuki from the sludge villain. But that's not why Katsuki remembers him. Don't get him wrong. Katsuki is grateful to have been saved from the villain. As much as he hates to admit it, he would have died if the hero hadn't arrived on time. But no, the reason Katsuki remembers him so clearly is the incredibly familiar green hair he saw that day. When he woke up in the hospital, Katsuki thought he imagined it, but he saw the reports. The whole thing turned out to be recorded, so Katsuki has no doubt about his hair color. The media went crazy. After all, nobody knows anything about the hero's duality, except that they are both 14 years old, probably 15 now. Katsuki, for a moment, even considered the possibility, but there was no way. The nerd was quirkless. Plus, he had green eyes. Poltergeist has blue eyes and Ifrit yellow. Aunt Inko had a type of telekinesis quirk, and Hisashi breathed fire. It has to be a coincidence. Izuku is dead, no matter how much Katsuki wants to believe he isn't. Katsuki only realized that he was staring at Hiro when they accidentally made eye contact. Katsuki looked back at the auditorium immediately, blushing. No one will ever make Katsuki admit it, but he has been a Poltergeist fan since before he was saved by him. He has a poster of the hero in his room. And he's also one of the people who created theories about why two heroes share the same hero ranking and the same name. His main theory is that of the twins. The two have a similar body structure. Before the incident with the sludge villain, no one had seen Poltergeist without the cloak, but Katsuki saw him up close. The body structure of the two is identical. They must be identical twins. When people start to leave the room, Katsuki realizes that he has missed all the rest of the explanation. Fuck. Well, he knows enough already. Destroy the robots. Get points. It's enough to know that. But Katsuki is not there to pass. He is aiming for first place. While the participants are split up and guided to their buses, and then off to their respective test blocks, accompanied by Present Mike, Izuku goes to the judging area. When they arrive, all the teachers are already waiting. So Izuku sits down next to his dad, who's drinking his 13th cup of coffee of the day. Dad, you remember the rule. No more than 17 coffees, Kuzu said, reaching for the bottle and pouring him a cup of coffee as well. I still don't know how you two like this bitter stuff, Zuku said, glaring at the cup in their hands. Blacker than a moonless night, Kuzu started saying. Hotter and more bitter than hell itself, Shoyuta continued. That is coffee. They finished together, then made a toast and downed their drink. You guys are impossible, Zuku sighed. Anyway, has anyone caught your eye? No one yet, Shoyuta replied, but no surprises there. His dad is really hard to impress. What about you? A few, Zuku replied, opening his notebook. But let's see how they fare against the robots. Then he looked at Nedzu. Anyway, how many 0-pointers do we have this year? One for each area, Nedzu replied. Then I'll make a bet, Kuzu said, looking at the list of names assigned to each area. At least one of the 0-pointers will be destroyed. I would say that 2 others might be deactivated but not destroyed. Interesting, Nedzu said with a glint in his eyes. And which ones do you have in mind? Katsuki Bakugu will no doubt destroy the one in his area, Zuka said. Hagakure Turu. She can get close to it without being noticed. It will be easy for her if she figures out the trick to deactivate it. It will all depend on whether she will try it or not. And the other one? Nedzu asked. Shinso Hitoshi. Zuku and Kuzu said together. Then Zuka went on. This is more of a hunch than anything else. But that one gave me a good impression. And not just because he looks like a younger version of Dad. He smirked at his dad, who just rolled his eyes and ruffled his hair. I will keep an eye on him. But if you want my bet, 0 villain points, between 30 and 40 rescue points. 50 if he tries to face the 0-pointer, Kuzu said. Very well, Nedzu said, looking at his screen. The students are ready to start. With that, everyone focused on the multiple screens. It's showtime. Kuzu grinned. Bloody hell. Could this test be more biased towards physical quirks? Destroy robots. Hitoshi's quirk is brainwashing. In a test like that, he is basically quirkless. The test already started more than 15 minutes ago, and he has not scored a single point yet. Maybe he would have scored something if he hadn't wasted his few chances trying to help imbeciles with no sense of self-preservation in the way of other robots. Why did he waste time doing this? Who knows? He moved before he realized it. The point is, he will never get into the hero course that way. Damn, this is his only chance to prove that he is not a villain just because of his quirk. In the back of his mind, he remembers the words he heard on the radio a year ago. Never let anyone tell you that you can't do it. You can do it. Never let anyone tell me that I can't do it. These words became his mantra since he heard them, even if they weren't directed to him. Duality became a hero when he was just 13. Eraserhead is Hitoshi's favorite hero, but the hero duo is a close second place. I can do it, Hitoshi said to himself again before running after another robot. Then he heard a tremor that gave him a horrible feeling. What now? 60 points already. Katsuki is having a blast with this test. It's like it was literally made for him. Looks like the robots are attracted by sound. To each one Katsuki destroyed, 2 others appeared. Katsuki had just scored another 3 points when he heard a loud thud on the floor. Then another one, and another one, rhythmically like steps. When he looked, he saw a giant robot walking in his direction. Everyone immediately started running away from it. Cowards. Katsuki simply grinned. A kaiju robot, he yelled, starting to run after the robot. Now we're talking. He was about to use an explosion to blast himself towards the robot's face when he heard a voice calling. A little help here? Someone. When he looked, he saw a redhead with shark-like teeth trapped under some rubble. Katsuki remembers seeing him a few times during the test. He was punching the robots and was hit a few times, but didn't even feel anything. Hardening? It is a possibility. If that is the case, he should be fine. Better ignore him and go after the Titan robot. But just as he took the first step, a voice in the back of his mind stopped him. An infuriatingly familiar voice. If someone needs help, isn't it a hero's job to help, Kaken? Looking one more time at the robot, then gritting his teeth, Katsuki ran towards the redhead and kneeled in front of him. Oi, shiny hair. What's your quirk? He asked to confirm his suspicion. Shiny hair? We have practically the same haircut. The redhead protested. My quirk is hardening. I can harden any part of my body. Then do it. I'll blow this rubble. And protect your eyes. Katsuki replied, putting his hands on the rubble covering him. When he saw the redhead covering his eyes, he activated his explosions and blasted all the rubble away. The redhead then tried to get up. It seems he's okay. Thanks, bro. This was so manly. The redhead grinned at him. Katsuki was about to tell the shiny hair to go die when they heard the giant robot again, and he was too close for comfort. Fuck, Katsuki cursed. Then he had an idea. Throw me. What? Shiny hair asked. Are you fucking deaf? Katsuki asked. Throw me at the fucking robot. I'll blow him to pieces. Are you sure? Shiny hair asked again. We have no fucking time. Just fucking throw me. This seemed to do the job. Shiny hair grabbed Katsuki and threw him against the robot with all his strength, which was a bit more than Katsuki expected. Maybe his hardening also gave him a lesser strength augment? Anyway, Katsuki flew against the robot, using his explosions to correct his trajectory. He saw the giant zero, P painted in the robot carcass and grinned. Op, I'll show you who is Op. He stopped above the robot's head and aimed his strongest explosion down. Die. The result was instantaneous. The robot's head could not withstand the explosion and was completely destroyed, and the rest of the robot collapsed under its own weight. It seems that this one also only had size. The moment Katsuki returned to the ground, he heard a signal. The test is over. Now, how many points was the Titan worth again? Isn't that thing a bit too much, plus ultra? A giant Titan robot? Really? And this thing is worth 0 points? This school has too much money. Nope. There's no way Hitoshi will be facing this thing. No fucking way. He was just turning around to flee with the others when he heard someone calling. Help! No, stop, Hitoshi. This is the UA. There's no way they will really let anyone in danger. Just run. He didn't run. Before he could think logically, he started running in the direction he heard the scream, and he quickly saw it. A girl trapped under a pile of rubble. She has a broken leg, at the very least. Hitoshi ran to her and started trying to lift the ruble to help her. He managed to raise it just enough for the girl to crawl from under it. But by the time he did, the kaiju robot was already too close. God damn it. Hold on. Hitoshi yelled and started running towards the robot, who noticed him and aimed a punch at him. Hitoshi jumped to the side, avoiding the punch, but the shockwave made him lose balance. He looked at the giant fist buried in the floor. This thing could have smashed him. But then he shook his head, jumped on the fist, and started running up on the robot's arm towards its head. He stopped on its shoulder. All right, I hope this thing is as dumb as it looks, he said to himself, then brought 2 fingers to his mouth and whistled as loud as he could while patting the robot's head with his other hand. The robot noticed and tried to punch him again. Looks like it is, Hitoshi said, grinning, then jumped down from the robot. The fist collided with the robot's head, smashing it. The impact also made the robot lose its balance and fall back. Looks like his plan worked. Hitoshi just had the time to smile for a second before realizing something. He's falling down to the floor. Fast. He didn't plan for this part. Great. Forget about being a hero. He's about to die. Hitoshi closed his eyes, waiting for the impact, but then he felt a hand pressed against his chest, and the impact never came. When he opened his eyes, he saw the girl with her hand outstretched towards him, and he was floating. Looks like she saved him. She opened her mouth to say something, but then they heard a signal. The test is over. Sighing, Hitoshi felt his weight coming back and fell down to the floor. He looked back to the 0-pointer on the floor. Great, the only robot he has defeated, and it's the one that is worthless. Hitoshi just wants to go home and take a nap, if possible, for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, in the judging area, everyone was open-mouthed by what they had just witnessed. All except 3 people, or 2 people and a rat. Shoyuta simply watched in his ordinary expression. But Izuku saw the moment when he lifted the corners of his mouth for a single second. Nedzu was laughing maniacally, and Izuku had an ear-to-ear grin on his face. Izuku exchanged a look with his father, and both of them nodded. Nedzu-san. Izuku started. It doesn't matter how. I want him in 1A. Chapter 11. Chapter text. It's here. The UA letter just arrived, and Hitoshi is already trembling. It was by pure luck that he found it before anyone else in his foster home. If one of the other kids had seen it, they would have either hidden it, read it, or destroyed it before Hitoshi could even know it had arrived. Even worse if his foster parents had found it. They think Hitoshi only applied for Gen Edition. If they knew that Hitoshi tried the hero course, just thinking about the punishment makes Hitoshi shiver. But now, the letter is in his hands. Hitoshi is sure he failed the hero test. He hadn't scored a single point on the entire physical test, but at least he hopes he got a good enough score in the written test to get a place in Gen Ed. Running to his room before anyone else could see him, Hitoshi locked the door. Technically, this room isn't just his, but the other kid is never home at this time, so it's no problem. Not wanting to delay the inevitable any longer, Hitoshi tore open the envelope with a little more force than necessary. From inside it fell a metal disc. It looks like some kind of transmission device. Did everyone who took the exam get one of these? Really, the UA has too much money. Examining the disc, Hitoshi found and pressed a button on the right side, and then a hologram began to be transmitted. I am here, as a projection. The phrase screamed, All Might, but the person saying it was not All Might. Damn, how can he say something like that with a straight face? Hitoshi's mouth was practically on the floor, but how could it not be? The one in the projection is a child, apparently the same age as Hitoshi. Most of his face is covered by a skull mask, leaving only his yellow eyes exposed, and wearing a simple red hoodie. There is no way for Hitoshi not to recognize him. This is Ifrit. The question is, why is a projection of Ifrit in the UA letter? Why is a projection of Ifrit in the UA letter? Ifrit mimicked Hitoshi's thoughts. What a great question, Shinsukuan. It is. Another voice asked. Then the projection cut exactly half of Ifrit's body. Then the right side of the image started showing another kid. This one had a skull mask exactly like Ifrit's, but he was wearing a back cloak covering his entire body. "Nice to meet you, Shinsukuan," he said, "though we aren't meeting yet. It's more Lee Dash." Anyway, answering the question before this one starts muttering. Ifrit cut. "As you probably know, we are the duality hero. I'm Ifrit. And I'm Poltergeist," Poltergeist said. "And we are here for 2 reasons. First reason, starting this year, we will act as an assistant teacher in Class 1A. The two keep completing each other's sentences. Is this a rehearsed speech? It's like they know exactly what the other is thinking. Maybe they